Dan Folkman, who is videotaping for us. Thank you, Dan. And these sessions will be, he's live streaming, and the sessions will also be posted on wisconsingrassroots.net/festival. Again, that is wisconsingrassroots.net/festival. So you can send it to your friends or clue your friends in what they missed. On deck beside Rita is Joel Lewis, Sarah Smith. Is Sarah here? Joel, come on up. David Stewart. David, are you here? Power for People for the Power of Love, and I'm more or less here. So come on up, Joel. And in this section, people are talking about their respective groups, giving a little update. And we're going to start with Frida, and she's speaking on behalf of United to Amend. Yes. Frida, come on up.
Thank you, Nate. I am, yes, Wausau United to Amend or Wisconsin United to Amend. It's also known as WYUTA, so if you see that, you know that's what it is. It was at a Grassroots Network festival in Wausau when I was first introduced to a group working on getting an amendment to our United States Constitution. This amendment would get the money out of our elections. It would overturn the Citizens United ruling from 2010. My husband Milton and I have always been concerned with the Supreme Court ruling and how it was affecting the political climate in Wisconsin. Back in 2012-13, we had joined friends and neighbors in developing a think tank, Wisconsin Community Voices. This think tank also was connected to Middle Wisconsin. Wisconsin Community Voices has since dissolved, but they have moved into being part of Middle Wisconsin. Many of our former members are now part of that group. At any rate, when we were at the Grassroots Network Festival in Wausau, our think tank was at one of the breakout sessions to talk about think tanks. I stopped at a Move to Amend table to visit with the person that was staffing it. In our discussion, the idea began to form that citizens in Wausau could be part of this movement too, and that is exactly what it is. It is a movement. It may take some time, but we will get that amendment to the Constitution. With the backing of our think tank, we decided to become the champions in Wausau. Thus, the roadshow, aided by George Penn and Jim Chris, super guys, along with others from Wisconsin United to Amend, was set up in April of 2014, which helped us get volunteers to do the needed petition drive. Our kickoff day was at the end of May, and 60 days later, we had more than enough signatures, which we turned into the city clerk. The referendum was on the ballot that November and passed with 77% of the citizens of Wausau voting to get big, dark money out of our elections. Was it hard work? Yes. I cannot say it wasn't. But we found 52 other people who helped us to obtain those signatures. They just kind of like came out of the woodwork. We started and they joined us. It didn't matter what political affiliation they were, Republican, Democrat, or Independent. Wausau citizens wanted that money out. For a little background on how this ruling of Citizens United came about, it was in January 2010 that the United States Supreme Court ruled in favor of Citizens United versus the Federal Elections Commission, also known as the FEC. This ruling says that money is speech and that corporations, unions, and other such entities have personhood. They now have the same rights as a person, even though they are not one. Then in April 2014, the United States Supreme Court ruled in favor of McCutcheon versus the FEC. In this ruling, unlimited and dark money has blocked our political system. There is little transparency in where the money is coming from or where it is going. It could have come from Russia, China, Iran, who knows? With our super PACs, money is hidden very well. The huge amount of money is mind-boggling. Just this past presidential election, almost $7 billion was spent on that campaign alone. Largest ever. And this is only the money that was reported. I'm betting there was a lot more. And then there's the money spent on all the other races down the ticket. Just think what that money could have been used for besides buying our representatives. Roads and bridges built, jobs created, children fed, a much lower national debt, maybe health care for all, college debt reduced. People in Wausau voted by 77% that they wanted the big money out, and they wanted an amendment to the U.S. Constitution to overturn Citizens United. In addition to Wausau, 116 other Wisconsin communities either put the same referendum on the ballot or their town and county boards passed the resolution. The people in these communities have had their voices heard. As a matter of record, all the referendums overwhelmingly passed. None failed. Wisconsinites, whether Republican or Democrat or Independent, they want the money out. 19 other states have asked for Citizens United to be overturned with an amendment to the United States Constitution. Help us to make Wisconsin the 20th state asking for this amendment. Please stop by our table for a chat. Think about being a champion in your community or to see how you can help to keep this movement going. No other issue is more important than fair elections with all citizens having an equal voice in that process. I'd like to close with a quote from Robert Wright. To me, it explains what has happened to our democracy and why our representatives aren't doing their job. Suppose a small group of extremely wealthy people sought to systematically destroy the United States government by finding and bankrolling new candidates pledged to shrinking and dismembering it, to systematically destroy the U.S. government by intimidating or bribing many current senators and representatives to block all proposed legislation, prevent the appointment of presidential nominees, eliminate funds to implement and enforce laws, and threaten to default on the nation's debt, or systematically destroying the U.S. government by taking over state governments in order to redistrict, gerrymander, require voter IDs, purge voter rolls, and otherwise suppress the voices of the majority in federal elections, or systematically destroying the U.S. government by running a vast PR campaign designed to convince the American public of certain big lies, such as climate change isn't occurring, or systematically discovering the U.S. government by buying up the media so the public cannot know the truth. Would you call this treason? Think about it. And thank you.
This is Joel Lewis, folks. Citizen Action.
All right, well, thank you very much. And Rita, thank you. I did get to knock some doors a little bit briefly during the move to event.
Yes, you did. Joel helped.
And it was a great experience. And I also was able to get people out knocking doors that typically don't knock doors, which was pretty cool. If only we could get them to knock doors all the time, right? So anyway, I work for Citizen Action of Wisconsin and the North Central Organizing Co-op. So how many of you in the room, by show of hands, have heard of Citizen Action of Wisconsin? Okay, great. So I'm among friends, right? Well, there's a curse in Wisconsin that Citizen Action of Wisconsin has decided to take on full force. And that is, when someone writes a big check for something progressive in our state, the majority of that investment goes to Milwaukee and Madison every single time. And the reason that is that they get more bang for their buck. You can hit a heck of a lot more doors in an apartment building in Milwaukee or Madison than you can going out into the hinterlands of Vilas County, right, David Barnhill? So that's the problem. People do not want to write big checks to organize Northwoods, Wisconsin. So Citizen Action of Wisconsin looked at this. And they used to just be a research think tank, basically, specifically on Medicare for all, healthcare for all type of thing. But they went around the state and they did press conferences all the time. A guy named Kevin Kane would basically reach out to people like me or David or Rita or many of the other folks in this room and say, hey, we're coming to town about this issue. How many people can you get in the room? We want to make sure we get press. Okay, great. And they would literally do like 6 press events a day to do this. Well, the problem is that it wasn't locally from Milwaukee and Madison. And so those folks said, well, how can we make it so that the people in northern Wisconsin have a voice and have a long-term ability to organize, not just in elections, but in between elections? And so they created what's known as the co-op model. And some of you might remember Uniserve from way back in the day. They had a similar model, but Citizen Action was able to look at that and some of the other models that have existed and try to fix those flaws. So basically my job exists because I've reached out to 280 people who pay $20 or more a month in order for me to make $15 an hour and have a health care plan and be able to organize full time. There's also a co-op like So I'm the youngest one out of all the ones in the state. We have one in western Wisconsin, which the man who's clapping over here knows them well. That's Jeff Smith is the organizer over there. It's about a 9-county region. They were able to get a moratorium on CAFOs in Dunn County by bringing people together, not with the R or the D, but because they were against CAFOs. They were against concentrated animal feeding operations. So Republicans, Independents, and Democrats, all of them came together to fight CAFOs in Dunn County and got a moratorium. In Eau Claire County, they were able to fight for the most progressive living wage referendum in state history. So if you work for Eau Claire County, you have to be paid a living wage, and that changes from year to year. It's based on a percentage, not a set number. Then we also have the co-ops in the greater Milwaukee area. One of the ones I really want to bring up is Radioactive. Earl Ingram, who's here with 1510 AM, is very much a part of that Radioactive campaign. And what they do is they hold folks accountable to the things they say on the radio. So one of the right-wing talk radio people in Milwaukee said this about Tammy Baldwin. If the Toma VA was full of lesbians, she would have done something about it by now. Okay? Well, this was said on a radio station that has publicly traded companies advertising and supporting their crap. And so Citizen Action and Radioactive said, hey, great. We're going to call every single one of those companies and say, do you actually support this kind of logic? Is this something you want to go on the record as supporting? No, they didn't. Of course they didn't want to do that. And so then they were able to get this DJ to apologize and to go back on that. And then now we have Northeastern Wisconsin Co-op as well. So how many of you have heard about nonpartisan redistricting or ending gerrymandering by show of hands? All right, great. I don't have to go into an educational seminar about that. So basically, that co-op worked with a guy named Hans Breitenmoser out of Lincoln County, who happens to belong to our co-op, and worked with other people in the Fair Maps Coalition. This is about 10 other groups. And they went from having 8 county boards that passed resolutions asking for nonpartisan redistricting to 30 in 2 months' time because of our members around the state. And I'm going to have to ask for a round of applause for that. I saw one of the county board supervisors from Marathon County poke in and then run out, Katie Rosenberg, that tried to help get it passed there. And that county board ironically said it was too partisan of an issue for them to take up. Well, it's a 38-member board, 25 of them are likely Republican. But every county around them now is now passing that. And so the idea here is, no matter what comes out of the Supreme Court, no matter what our state does, if we can get the majority of our counties to tell the state legislature we don't support this partisan gerrymandering, then we can actually make a change and really hold them to the fire on that. And most recently, Hans Breitenmoser went to the Wisconsin Counties Association meeting, and 56 of our 72 counties voted yes, that they want to have a nonpartisan redistricting procedure. In addition to resisting the repeal and replacement of the healthcare law, in addition to working on nonpartisan redistricting, our members have also listened to the folks that pay into our co-op, who said their top 3 issues are voting rights, environmental rights, and healthcare, or environmentalism and healthcare. And so the third thing that they've really actively worked on and developed is something called the PACE campaign, or Green Jobs, Green Future campaign. So there's actually a program out there, PACE, Property Assessed Clean Energy, that you can get 0% interest loans as a business owner. And the bigger the business, the more likely this will work. One of the businesses locally that's already starting to look into this and consider it is this building right here, the Wausau Labor Temple. They're looking at doing some renovations, and we told them, hey, there's 0% interest loans out there where you can have solar panels and reduce your costs long term and be a part of this movement that's going to be the future. And they were all very excited about it. So that was developed by our members. It has bipartisan support at the national level. It's already there. We don't have to get anyone to say they support it. And so that's what can happen when we bring folks together. And when we drop the letter in front of the party we believe in and actually just focus on the issues. And so I just want to give you all a big thank you for being a part of this. All of the organizations in this room, like Naomi, People for the Power of Love, UUAW, Marathon County Democratic Party, the grassroots people, all of these folks come together. Thank you for coming together, and I hope we can continue to bridge this divide and continue to work on issues that matter to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Excuse me.
You can confuse me with
Joel.
Josh, that's okay.
Joel. Too many J names and too many new developments. So I do want to correct one other thing in the program that I don't want to forget, and that's when we get to the Supreme Court candidates, which are coming a little later in the afternoon. It's Rebecca Dallett, who we misspelled her name. It's not Dallas, it's Dallett, D-A-L-L-E-T. So please, our apologies. When you take names, I didn't have to take this one, but you know how it is when you take stuff over the cell phones. Sometimes it sounds one way, but it is another. So her name is Rebecca Dallett. And I think she will be having a surrogate speak for her. So let's see. Do we have any of our other panelists? Sarah Lloyd, are you here? Sarah, you going to speak for Sarah Lloyd?
Yes.
Okay, come on up. Just announce yourself. I'll give you the mic here. Thanks for doing that.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. I'm Terrence Worthing. I'm one of the co-chairs of our Wisconsin Revolution. Sarah Lloyd was supposed to be here, but she has another engagement with the Farmers Union. She'll be a little late. You get a chance to meet her later this afternoon, and please do. She's better at the job than I am. Essentially, this is us explaining who we are and what we do, right? And we all say the same things. We all have the same progressive set of values. We all want a living wage. We all want to live in a clean state where we can drink the well water. We all want health care and education available to everyone. The difference with our Wisconsin Revolution is that we cross that bridge into how we're going to get that done. You know, we all are good at the resistance part, but it's resistance to governance that gets changed for us. And that's our purpose. That is essentially who we are and what we do. The rest of it, the speech, the vision statement, all of that's online, that's on the website. Someone else writes that. They're very good at it, I'm not. Essentially, I'm not up here to tell you why you should be a part of us. I'm here to ask you if I can work for you. We're here to ask you what we can do for you in your community, in your county, in your municipality, in your city, and in this state. That's who we are. We are here to get people elected. We're here to make change, permanent change, legislative change in the state of Wisconsin, in our counties, in our communities, from the bottom up, because there really is no bottom. If we had every county board, every alderman position, every city clerk position, every county coroner, half the district attorneys. Think about how little it really takes to pivot the attitude of a state. And what we want to do as far as our members and those who want to join with us is impart on you the skills that it takes to get everyone registered to vote, for canvassing, for that personal engagement, and then for civic engagement. Those are the three pillars that I try and preach with our organization. We are in a voter suppression state, period. We lost 300,000 plus people from the voting rolls in 2017. Those were people that hadn't voted since the presidential election of 2012. There's a reason that it's in that time frame. We lost people that are most likely going to agree with us. And it isn't always in the areas that you think. The counties hit with the highest percentages were actually red counties. It wasn't Milwaukee and Madison that got hit the hardest. It's the people that have the least chance to defend themselves against things like CAFO and Foxconn. Those are the communities being disenfranchised as well. We're asking you, whoever you are, whoever you work for, to be active in voter registration in the state of Wisconsin. And if you want to know how, we will have presentations for that. We will have support for that. Our members will be able to help you with that. As far as canvassing, those one-on-one conversations, yes, there you can get the van data, and you can get the right algorithm, and you can get the programs and all that cute stuff that everybody puts out. And that's why we're all here, because that all works so well, right? Right? Putting people into categories and into boxes is something that you do when you have the power to put people in categories and into boxes. And it actually turns people off. Everyone on the north side of Milwaukee knows why you're knocking on their door 2 weeks before an election, 1 week before an election. You know why someone's showing up in your community in a potluck right before they want to get elected. We are going to be an institution and a permanent part of the communities that we want to be in this state. And that's why we want you to tell us what you need from us. I'm not here to sell you a program. I'm not here to, let you join the political board and make you one of our little drones. We are chapter driven. The chapters are autonomous. The state doesn't tell you what to do, you tell us what to do. You tell us what the focus is going to be. And that third tier of civic engagement, it's always intimidating to people, especially when they start out. Coming to a meeting, speaking to a mayor or a state representative or their school board. And what you find once you get people to those meetings, they realize, these are the people that are running my life? These people are supposed to be so much smarter than I am and so much more capable? They're just other people. They're no smarter, no brighter, no more or less informed, but they might at times lack the basic foundation of your morals and the principles that we want to impart. So essentially, all I'm asking you for from our Wisconsin Revolution is this. Tell us what we can do to impart the change in your community that you want. And that's going to come from, in part, people being willing to run for office. And there are no small ones. Look for one. You have an area of expertise and the passion to do it, or you wouldn't be here today. You didn't have to get up this morning and drive through the rain to come do this. None of us have to be here. And if you're willing to be here and you care enough to be here, then you're capable of doing it. Look for something that you can run for yourself. Every single one of you. And we're going to support you in it. And if that's not enough technical information, the greatest thing about the group that I'm a part of, our Wisconsin Revolution, I say a part of because we don't have leaders, we have members. Anybody in this room, and can any of our members just raise your hand for you right now? From our Wisconsin Revolution?
I'm not a member, but I'm a friend.
Tammy counts, we drafted Tammy, she's one now. If you see a hand up in this room, the greatest thing about this organization is I know you can go to any one of these people, any one with their hand up right now, and you're going to get as much more out of them than you will out of me, and you'll get an answer about your community and what you can do and be a part of it. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm going to say a few words about Wisconsin Grassroots Network because that's on the agenda, and also we're hoping to transition the agenda in that Dennis Kucinich is nearby, and hopefully we will be able to put him on right away, and that means we'll flip the agenda a little bit. So we're kind of holding a few minutes. So Wisconsin Grassroots Network, I've said some things about it, but I want to kind of distinguish a little bit between the other groups, because you heard me say before that we're a non-membership group in the sense that we have people who sign up to participate and work with us, but we do not charge anyone a membership fee. We're a non-subscription or membership fee group. Our focus is primarily strategic. We're organizers primarily. This event is. Thank you. Thank you. But in addition to organizing events, is primarily on community organizing. You say, well, who needs the community organizers? Everybody doing it. Well, if that were really being successful, we probably would not be striving to replace Duffy or fill the 3 assembly seats in the 29th Assembly District or the Senate seat. So we have a ways to go on that front. And part of the real challenge is a mini community-based organization focusing on small communities, not just the large ones. It's relatively easy to organize large communities, especially if they have a history of having leaned blue, like I mentioned before. What's really tough is to organize small communities in red areas. And that's part of what we aspire to do. And we really challenge all of the other organizations, Our Revolution, Move to Amend, everybody to work on that project, because what we're looking for is a contact person. And you don't have to, identify them as part of WGN, but identify them for your own organization and get them to commit to being an active representative of that community. And then later we can catch up with who are the representatives that you have in your particular organization in a specific community. That's the challenge. And if we would all work on identifying a contact in, the ARPANs and arenas and all of the, I can't think of a few of them right around here right now, but you know what I'm talking about, the really small, like 1,000 or less. If we could get a person to represent each of those organizations, then we would have a network that's much more powerful than what we've got now. So if any of you can go home and think about your community where you live, if there isn't an organized representative from there, think about being that organized representative. And all you have to do is establish a communication network. And there's many little simple things you could do. Get somebody who will write a letter to the editor from that group. Get somebody who will just keep track of what's going on in the school board, the county board, the town board, the city council, the village board in your community. All of those things are just simple things that would help to make your community vital. So, and if you want to touch base with me or Bob Kriegel or Reverend John Stanley here, we will be happy to support you and work with you and enable you. So, and we do have that website. We meet every other week in the Madison area at the Roadside Grill. We've been meeting for like 6 or 7 years. So we've had a commitment to this kind of work for a long, long time. And we're continuing on as long as somebody's able. And then, of course, the work that I'm also chair of the Rural Caucus, so I wear two hats, co-chair of the Grassroots Network and chair of the Rural Caucus. And so regionally, I'm doing the work of organizing the Senate districts. Here are all the Senate districts. And like I told you, all of these 4 Senate districts in the 3rd Congressional District are organized regionally. And today we made the move to start on the 29th. This one here, this long green one, and that's underway now for in the 7th. So hopefully, and I just talked to Gary Goyke, you probably all know Gary, a real active Democratic leader, and he invited me to come over to an event in the Fox River Valley and talk to them about doing that same kind of work over there. So I'm very pleased by the support the idea is getting. If you have an area of the state that you would like to talk to me about, here I am. So now we're ready. I understand that Dennis is here. Dennis Kucinich, I hope you're here. Come on.
It's just me. I am very pleased and very happy and very grateful to introduce our keynote speaker and one of me and my mom's favorite Congress representatives, Dennis Kucinich. I'm sorry, can we give him a round of applause when he enters? I thought they were just cute, but there's wires back here, they're doing interviews, and here he is.
Thank you, John. Hello, Wausau, Wisconsin. Great to be here with you. Nice to be among all these troublemakers, activists, rabble-rousers, change makers. You're not paid to be here. I'm not paid either, we're together. Thank you for the invitation to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to come here on this beautiful autumn afternoon to share some and why we do what we do, which is to change the world. There is no purpose in taking the energy that we have from within us and going out there day after day after day, committed to change, unless it's our intention to change the world. Now, as someone who began this journey many years ago, I've learned many things. And one of the first things that I learned is that what is innermost, what's inside of us, inevitably becomes outermost. If we want to change the world, we first have to tap that potential within ourselves for change. And that's an evolutionary process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's easy to stand on stages around the world and to talk about how this has to change and that has to change and stop this, start that. But it's much more difficult to look inside oneself and find out what can we do to be appropriate agents to be individuals who can use the power of our own imagination, the power of our own spirits, to bring about the evolutionary potential of ourselves. And then when we are able to do that, the spiritual power of that infuses everything we touch. Because there is a connection between the material world and the spiritual world. And when we want to change things in the material world, the human spirit has to be projected into that activity. Otherwise, it's devoid. It doesn't mean anything. Because we're more than this physical self. What propels us along is this, in this desire to change things, is the sense of the primacy of the human spirit and infusing that human spirit into events to bring about transformation. Now, I started at a community level in the city of Cleveland. I started exercising these thoughts about the mechanics of change, the physics. Campaigns for to stop the closing of a library in one case, to build a library in another, to stop the closing of a firehouse in one place, to help build a firehouse in another. And what I found out in each case is that if we're able to give of ourselves wholly and relentlessly, if we if we don't quit, if we understand that defeat and victory are just opposite sides of that coin of involvement that happens. You know, we win, we lose. It doesn't matter. It's our commitments that are enduring. And if we understand when we build this common unity, which we call community, the power that comes from that, we know and we experience the dynamic of what happens when we're one. In this moment right now, we have a unified field. We're one. We're thinking not just about my work, but we're thinking about our own experience, about where we've been, about what we want to do, about what it is that we'd like to apply ourselves to or are applying ourselves to. My experience has been that on matters small and large, the physics of change are the same, that we have to be able to envision the world that we want. And let me give you an example. Okay, this is a wall, but it's also on a subatomic level. It's in motion. This wall is in motion. But the particles are held together. We have a wall. But what happens when you see a wall, some solid mass of what might look like objective reality, and we're told that's it, it's a wall. But what if you look at that wall and you see another reality there? You just see it. You envision something different. The physics of change involve envisioning another reality, and actually, in quantum physics, there's a fellow by the name of David Bohm, who's a very famous physicist, and he talks about what's called the implicate order. In other words, is what you see, but then there's something behind that. The space in between the spaces on a subatomic level are called gluon. They're particles that hold the reality together, but there's another reality there. In every moment, in every challenge we see, in every circumstance we're in every situation that we want to change, let me tell you there is another reality within there. We might look at it and say, that's a wall. No, there's another reality. You have to envision it, and when you look forward and you send it into motion. I have time and time again seen circumstances where people say, you can't do anything about that. You can't change that. You can't stop that. The deal's cut, forget it. And over again, through applying principles of creative envisioning, through understanding that multiple realities exist simultaneously, to being able to pick the reality that you want and make it, and create it, recreate it. That's the power of being an activist.
Hell yeah.
That's where we have, through heart infused with spirit, through intellect guided by what you as activists do is holy. It is sacred. It is touching the world in a way that says that, we can heal it, we can calm it, we can elevate it, we can transform it. That's what we believe. And it's not about labels, political parties, that level of politics, forget about it. That's so limiting. It's not about polarities, because polarized thinking, and this is one of the problems of our time today, polarized thinking, the us versus them, to turn on each other through social, racial, or partisan divisions. And it's all stupid, because it doesn't really describe who we are. It limits the expression of our humanity. It limits the power of our activism. If we come to a situation we figure, I can't talk to them, they're this party or that party. No. We're all one. We're interconnected. We are interdependent. Human unity is the first truth. Human unity is the precondition that we move into. And so we need to always look for that underlying unity. It does exist. I traveled America for years in the 2004 campaign and the 2008 campaign, and I had a chance to see America in a way that few people have had the opportunity. In meetings like this all over the country. And there is an underlying unity in this country. You wouldn't know it, though, because our policies of leaders seek to divide us, to put us into warring camps, and then we're left struggling at some level with this idea that we suffer from irreconcilable differences. We do not. So it's up to each of us to be able to take that journey to find the unity within and express it outwardly, to find in every the points where we might get involved and start to tease apart a question and say, this is where we can enter into it and take the series of steps that must be taken to go from something that seems irredeemably, abstractly unchangeable to something that suddenly, somebody says a miracle has occurred. Well, let me tell you, the miracles are inside of us waiting to unfold. They're inside of us waiting to be unlocked. I know this from my experience. When it was 40 years ago that I began a campaign for mayor of the city of Cleveland on a commitment to a private utility, and the system had already been sold. It was sold. my closest advisor was saying, Dennis, what part of soul don't you understand? It's done, it's over. I sat at the top of my steps on Milan Avenue in Cleveland, little colonial bungalow that we still have today. And it was like midnight. And I was really meditating on this condition of people having their little electric system that provided savings on electricity and had been around for 70 years, all of a sudden it's going to be taken over, and the mayor and the council had gone along with it, and the media had gone along with it, and all the organizations in town had gone along with it, the business community was beating the drum for it, and it was little old me. How preposterous it was. I mean, really. That somebody who was, yes, had been in politics a few years already, but that somebody who was coming from a neighborhood in a city could have the temerity to think that he was going to reverse a decision that had already been made. So I sat at the top of the stairs and I meditated. I actually thought, well, what can I do? And it just kind of, and every one of us has this moment where you think about what you can do about a situation, it just kind of starts to come to you. And I put it down on paper. Here's the steps we need to take. And one thing after another. Actually, the physics of change has its architecture. You have to have structure, you have to have form. And so I laid it out. I laid out a campaign and started it, put it in motion. And suddenly, things started to open up that people thought. And that set me on a campaign that really resulted in me being elected mayor of the city of Cleveland at the age of 30, 40 years ago. So we saved the electric system. I was elected mayor, canceled the sale, and then I found out more about my community. But I thought I knew where City Hall was. What I didn't know is that City Hall was in the boardrooms of the banks and utilities and the newspaper editors' offices, and you know that was what they believed was the real City Hall. And I thought I knew where City Hall was, and I had the audacity to believe that I was actually the mayor. But let me tell you, I was the product of the aspirations of the people to not just save an electric system, but to take the city in a new direction. On December 15th, 1978, the biggest bank in the state of Ohio came to me and said, Dennis, you're going to sell that electric system because if you don't, we, the bank, credit on loans I hadn't even taken out. I was being blackmailed. I said no. They put the city into default. We found out later the bank was a business partner of the utility, owned utility stock. But then we came back again and created another campaign. We were told that 95% of the people wanted our municipal utility sold, since they thought, well, that's why the city of Cleveland went into default. But we had an election 3 months later on the question, and 95% against Muni Light turned out to be 66% in favor of Muni Light. How in the heck does that happen? The miracles that we worked in Cleveland, just on the issue of an electric system, were symbolic or a testament to the but they need us to happen. So today, that little utility is I think it's in 114th year. Still around, and so am I. But I'm not in my 114th year. I mention this because I have seen over and over again people saying you can't do it. We had a steel mill that was closed. We reversed the situation and saved 3,000 jobs. We had a railroad that was going to run 48 trains a day through residential communities. It's been a nightmare for people in the western part of Cleveland. We did something that no one's ever done. we beat the railroads at the Surface Transportation Board. In 1999, President Clinton was looking for authorization from Congress to authorize a continuation of an air war against Serbia. Quietly, I organized Democrats to work with Republicans, and when they called the vote, it was like watching a basketball game, a high-scoring game. It was 211 to 211, 213 in favor of the resolution or the war, 212 against, and we were losing by one vote when the gavel dropped. I remember I talked about looking at a wall and calling forth another reality. Here's how that worked on this vote. There's a convention in the House of Representatives that when members vote, some will come in late. And if they're coming in late, as a courtesy, unless the vote is finally gavelled, the person's given a chance to vote. But the way you do that is that somebody calls out, they'll look down the hall and they'll go like this, and somebody will call out, one more, one more. So the gavel was dropping. I stood at the back of the House of Representatives. I looked out the door and I shouted, one more, one more. And I'm going like this. The chair waited a couple minutes. People are milling around in the House. There's an undercurrent of disorganization and chaos as the vote is going on. And then again, the gavel falls. The vote's about to be called. We're losing by one vote. I stand near the door and I call out, one more, one more. Of course, there was no one there. The Democratic leader figured out what I was doing and actually shoved me. I mean, gave me a shove that was worthy of an NFL player. This is not a game. At that exact moment, the gavel finally fell. Out of nowhere, a vote materialized. Out of nowhere. Making it a tie. A tie meant that the vote failed. We won. We stopped the continuation of the war against Serbia that way. So let me tell you, I know, and that may be, by the way, that may be the president has been denied a vote to keep a war going, and we had it happen one more time with respect to Libya, and we tied up the capital and NATO and the world for a couple of days when we put together another coalition to stop that war in its tracks. But then it was able to proceed. But see, I mention this because even when you talk about things that appear as intractable as a war, by entering in at the right moment, by having the presence of mind about what's going on, you can change things. Now, I'd like to address something that's been and that is the events in Las Vegas. Can I ask you before I start, can I ask you what time it is right now? That's 2:45? 2:45, great, we're good. Every one of us, I know I can speak for all of us because wherever I've been in the last few days, people are talking about it and their hearts sick. All of us were there. Not just 20,000 people, but because time is an illusion, we were all there. Rained down on people cutting short their lives, altering forever their families, their communities. And we're still there. And we're in Newtown still. We're still there. Those were our children. We're being asked in some cryptic way to accept the inevitability of violence in our society. There's nothing we can do about it. That's what we're told. There's nothing we can do about it. It's just the way it is. On July the 11th, 2001, I brought, after thinking about the experience that I had in challenging the war against Serbia, and thinking about how men and women were usually very placid and community spirited, would get into the Democratic caucus and come out for war when they were otherwise peaceful people. And I wonder, how the heck does this happen? How do we get pulled into wars? And I did some research and I found out that in the 20th century, over 100 million people perished in wars, most of them innocent, non-combatant civilians. 100 million more. And then I thought, as I started to study it, I thought about what is underneath war. What's that impulse towards violence? And I went back into thinking about an experience that all of us have had, or we know somebody who's had it. Look at the evidence of domestic violence that exists. We know about it. And when I speak of it, we do it compassionately because it touches so many people we know. Spousal abuse, child abuse, people, mostly adults in this room. Some of you know about child abuse. Some of you have experienced it years ago. And then we have violence in the schools, gang violence, gun violence, racial violence, violence against gays. I was thinking of all these symptomatologies of violence in a society that appears to be unhinged. And we're told, well, you really, that's the way it is. Violence, American, is apple pie. Well, wait a minute. The poet, well, actually the essayist, Emerson, once wrote, "Every jet of chaos which threatens to exterminate us is convertible by intellect into wholesome force." Every jet of chaos which threatens to exterminate us is convertible by intellect into a wholesome force. In other words, we have the power through our intellect to be able to apply it in every situation and use that to change things. So I was thinking about the matter of violence, and it occurred to me that if we, first of all, look within ourselves about these impulses. I mean, you want to take a lesson in practicing nonviolence, drive in heavy traffic at rush hour in a big city. You know what I'm talking about. But yet, because we're tested. Or be, parents in a big family. We actually every day have a chance. In every relationship we're in, we have a chance to practice peace or not, to escalate a discussion or not. Now, we think it may not matter how we approach these situations, but it always matters. Because violence that happens in a microcosm, even within our own lives, is writ large. Why are we teetering on the edge of a nuclear conflagration right now? Is it simply because we have some leaders who are unhinged? No. It's because we have a nation that needs to address the underlying cause of violence in our society. And when we're able to do that, we free ourselves of this chain of violence which tethers us to an existence of fear and of want and of a belief in the inevitability of our own demise. No, we don't have to be there. But we need to use our intellect and our resources to start to create programs to deal directly with the issues of violence in our own society on a day-to-day basis, to teach children that you never hit another person, to teach it from an early age, to have an organized approach in doing it. We need to do it compassionately. This isn't about blaming anyone. We all have these beasts that we have to struggle with from time to time and tame. Every one of us deals with feelings that we don't necessarily know what to do with at a moment, but we get help. And it's a moral imperative, it's a spiritual imperative, it's a cultural imperative. But we need to, as a country, address this issue of violence in an organized way. You can get rid of all the guns in America, and that would be quite a task, since there's a few 100 million of them. And we're still not going to solve the issue of violence. And I'm somebody who probably, would be the least favorite person of the NRA, because I have a pretty much 100% voting record that deals with trying to get rid of guns. I don't own guns, but you know what? I'm telling you, the nation right now is locked into, once again, the debate over guns, and we're looking in the wrong place. We're looking in the wrong place. We need to address the underlying issues of violence in our society, and we need to address the underlying issue of the mental health of our society. Life is tough on people. Most healthcare plans have very minimal support for people who have mental difficulties. And who doesn't at one time or another struggle? And so we pretend that, oh, no, it's not me, it's somebody else. No, wait a minute. We need to have compassion for each other. And we need to recognize that we have a society that has potential for unlimited possibilities, for more freedom, for less suffering, for better health. But we have to start paying attention to how we get there. This is one of the reasons why I've been for a universal, single-payer, not-for-profit healthcare system. I wrote the bill 15 years ago with John Conyers, and mental health is a key part of it. Medicine is also, it's not just the body, it's the mind as well. And so we need to have a comprehensive approach to dealing with violence and to mental health challenges that people face. And to do it without blaming anybody and say, look, this is time for us to do it. This is a moment to do it. What happened in Las Vegas is still another warning of what happens when we do not resolve it. And again, I don't want to see this country locked into what is really a debate that we can never resolve, at least not right away. We need to address something beneath it. See, I think that peace in the world is possible. I think the U.S. needs to take a different position in the world. I had the honor a week ago to speak to the United Nations about nuclear disarmament and nuclear abolition. And yesterday, the ICANN organization, an international organization people work on nuclear abolition, won the Nobel Peace Prize. That's a sign of the direction we can go in. But at the same time, people in Washington are pushing to cancel an agreement we have with Iran. That would mean more proliferation. So we have this dynamic balance going on right now. In a way, that's the fate of the earth. It's in balance. What side do we weigh in on? When we tame the impulse towards violence, we help to free the earth, and we help to permit the unfolding of this great destiny of peoples on a planet to elevate the human condition. Or, through miscalculation, the human condition could just be nullified. I'm an optimistic person. My activism informs me to be an optimist. If you're an activist, you cannot be a pessimist. You cannot, because that's poison to activism. You have to have impossible optimism. You have to, in the words of the poet Shelley, defy power which seems omnipotent. What do they say? This is what makes us free. This is glorious. And so, I'm so happy to be here because I'm surrounded by people. This is where I came from. This is the kind of place where I dwell. In a place of possibility, in a place of change, in a place of creating a new world. And it's not too late. It's not too late. So let's do it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, I do have time for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kucinich. We would like you, before you leave, to have time to look at the cakes we got for you, and to...
I'm sorry to ask, are they vegan? No, listen, I would like to share, to everyone here, to share the cake on my behalf and on behalf of everyone else who's celebrating. 22 years ago, I became a vegan. Now, it's not a religion. It's not a religion, but it's kind of the way I live. And so, but thank you for your thoughtfulness. I love you. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Dennis, we understand that it's your birthday tomorrow.
It is.
And so a lot of people want to wish you a happy birthday, and here's all the birthday cards that everybody signed.
Thank you.
Can you get the Brandons to stand and join and start us in a
Song of happy birthday.
Everybody, ready?
Come on, ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Dennis. Happy to you. Of the chair here to ask Dennis a question, and it may be a question on a number of your minds. First, I'm going to ask you a question. How many of you would characterize yourself as spiritual? Okay? That's what I anticipated. So here's my question, Dennis. How would you suggest, conventionally in the past, that tended to revolve around a religious configuration. And we now have realized that we're in a different place than just that. So how would you suggest that human beings get in touch with the spiritual dimension of their persona?
Well, I can share my experience. I respect all religions. I've studied most of them carefully. Spirit includes religions, but it goes beyond it. It connects with all possibilities. It connects with all people. It connects with believers and non-believers. It connects with the world and the air and the water and the environment. I'll tell you a story. My daughter, who is now a pretty well-known news person, when Jackie was growing up, she was 5 years old, and I took her to church on a Sunday. And after we left the church, she started crying. She said, "I don't want to do this anymore." She says, "It's just stupid." 5 years old, right? Now, how do you argue with a kid who says you're not going to do this? So what we did on Sundays, we started to go out to parks and talk about the spirit of the land, the spirit of the water, the spirit of the sky. Suddenly, this idea of spirit became a little bit different. It wasn't like about a building. It wasn't just one person who was the agent of that. It was about everything. For me, I don't get up in the morning. I can't get started in the morning if I don't have some resonance with that spiritual part of my existence. And I'm not talking about religion. A little bit different, because I don't promote religion. As people want to. I'm not a.
You're not proselytizing.
That's right. I was going to say that word. It's amazing how you could get everyone in this room. This is very basic. Food, shelter, jobs, health care, security, education. People, this is what these are the common human aspirations that we all have. But when you get into this idea of domination, of control, what's that about? Why in the world does the United States have over 800 bases in 130 countries? Why? What's the point of that? Why are we spending $1 trillion a year on wars, $700 billion of it for each person as a child? It was 15 years back then. People were saying, well, if I'd have known then what I know now. No, people knew then. They knew it. They knew we were waging a war based on lies. We're keeping up this nuclear infrastructure based on lies. We're keeping up a military presence all over the world based on lies. The world's changed. It's interconnected. It's interdependent. We're all one. Why are we prosecuting wars? Yes, we need to have some global force where we all come together to stop the people who want to wage war or control people or deny people food. Absolutely. My dad fought in World War II. My brother in the Iraq War. I would have been or in the Vietnam War. I'd have been there if I'd had a heart murmur. Our family's a military family, but I will tell you something. We have to stop identifying this country with war. We have to start identifying it with peace. And we have to demand, as activists and as people, that America work on diplomacy. That we fulfill the prophecy of nation not taking up arms against nations, of beating our swords into plowshares, our spears into pruning hooks, of nation, coming together. That's not some airy-fairy notion. That's ultimately what we're promised if we believe in human unity. If we believe that we can be better than we are and more than we are, we're not bound to this endless chain of war. I reject that notion, and we have to challenge leaders who believe in war. We have to challenge them. We have to challenge their thinking. We have to challenge their rationale. We have to challenge their budget. We have to challenge those who support war. We have to change those who are irredeemably in favor of war. We have to recognize the capacity our country has goes beyond just our weapons. It goes to our idea, our ingenuity, our creativity, our ability to make things that the world never even dreamed of. That's what it means to be an American. It doesn't mean just that we have the ability to win any war. We have to change this. It's about time we begin, too, I'll tell you. Okay, I've just been told I've got time for 2 more questions. Yes.
Hi, thank you for being here. I just wanted to ask you, what advice do you have for a newly elected local official to be the best public servant possible for the people they represent?
Don't be afraid. When you're newly elected, you have just as much of a right to speak out as anybody who's been around in that office forever. You're equal to everyone that's serving. And when interest groups come in and they say, this is what we must have, if it's not for the community, it's okay to say no. As a matter of fact, it's preferable to say no. Yes?
Dennis, is the NEAT Act dead, or is it merely hibernating in committee?
Well, the need is the National Employment Emergency Defense Act. I wrote it and introduced it in 2010 after 5 years of research. And what it's about is this. In 1913, the Federal Reserve was created. And before the creation of the Federal Reserve, the federal government had the power under Article 1, Section 8 to coin or create money. That was the power of the government. In 1913, and there's a book about it, I think it's called The Creature from Jekyll Island, and it's how the bankers came together at Jekyll Island, Georgia, and they created this Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve privatized the money supply. Before that, the government could issue money to meet the needs of the country. But after that, in order to meet the needs of the country, the government had to borrow money from the banks. The same year the Fed was created, the federal income tax was created. Same year, 1913, right behind that, which guaranteed that the government would be able to pay off the banks with the money from the country. So this privatization of the money supply had dramatic implications for all of us, because it meant that money equaled debt. It took me a long time to figure that out, what that meant. But it meant that you can't bring any money into being unless you create more debt. And banks had another power. It's called, when you borrow $100 from a bank, they can create $900. It's called fractional reserve banking. They can just make an entry in a book and create $900 and loan it out. So the more money people borrow, the banks grow geometrically. The Federal Reserve has the power of what's called quantitative easing. They create money out of nothing, and they give it to other banks. That's what they did during the subprime meltdown. Congress gave the banks hundreds of billions. The Fed created trillions of dollars to help support the speculation of banks that was going on everywhere. So with that in the background, I talked to a fellow by the name of Stephen Zarlenga, who just, God rest his soul, just passed away. And Stephen Zarlenga, on May the 4th, 2005, walked into my office, and he presented me with his ideas about monetary policy, and my life changed that day. Not only because he introduced me to monetary policy, but also because walking in the office with him was his assistant, who had just taken a job with him, and she had come from London to take a job with him. And when she walked in the room, our eyes met, and let me tell you, it was all over. And she, now Elizabeth and I have been married 12 years, but I met my wife through this monetary policy. I'm almost done. Thank you. So so I introduced what's called the National Employment Emergency Defense Act, and here's what it does. It changes the role of the Federal Reserve, puts it as a bureau under Treasury, reclaims for the government the power to be able to spend money into circulation to meet the needs of the country. We can create full employment. We can pay for health care for all. We can pay for education for all. We don't have to borrow money from banks. Banks will still be able to go into business, but they can't use fractional reserve banking. It'll be basically, one-to-one transactions like any other business. They're not creating things out of nothing. And the NEED Act actually reclaims the government's ability as a sovereign power to be able to meet the needs of the people. Now, the question comes, what about inflation? If inflation's a threat, you use taxation to cool off an overheating economy. We should not have the levels of taxation we have today. We just shouldn't. Except, we have war and debt, that's what we're left with. But anyhow, this subject, the NEED Act, if you go to the web and you type in percentage NEED Act, you'll you read about the underlying philosophy. But here's an example of, think you can't do anything about it? Oh no, this is coming. We can reclaim our destiny as a nation. But right now, where do our taxes go? It goes for war, it goes to pay off debt, it goes to make a few people wealthy at the expense of all of us. I think we can change that. Now, I can be reached through Kucinich.com, and through there, if there's a group of you who are interested in just getting some advice on something you're working on, I'm available to do that. Matter of fact, I love doing that because that's the way that we keep this movement for change going in our communities. Because that's how I started as a community activist. And I have the heart and soul of a community activist. So anytime people, it's always a great pleasure. I want to thank you for welcoming me. And I will tell you that this is already one of the best birthdays I've had. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Thanks for being with us. And thank you for acknowledging the buckets that are circulating around for donations. As you can well be aware, it costs something to have Dennis here. It costs something to put on this kind of event. And we're fortunate to have you here to help us with that. Thank you. So, moving to the next step in the program, the next step would be we flipped the breakout sessions with Dennis. So we're going to go next to the afternoon breakout sessions. And I'll read where they're located. The WPEN Smart Education, which Jeff Leverich over there is going to be the facilitator for that, is going to be right here in the large group room. Then the healthcare session will be in the back part of the room. Joel Lewis will facilitate that. Tammy Wood is going to facilitate the of, for, and by the people reviving democracy through citizen action, room A, which is just around the corner where you got your lunch. And barnstorming is at the lower level in the bar area, and creating empathy and understanding is at the lower level, the other room down there, which is room 13, where the signage workshop was this morning. So the bell will tell you when we're transitioning to the last event of the day, which is our political speakers. Thank you, everybody.
All right, folks. I'm going to break down and go to one of those breaks. Stay tuned. Here's a good opportunity to contact your friends on Facebook or elsewhere and tell them to join us. I think we're going to have another good session, and then we'll be back here for the final part of the program. But stay tuned as I move to the next small group room.
So I don't know if you guys are familiar with any stoners or not, but we have awesome t-shirts. Our t-shirts are cool. You know, I've got a couple that say one plant, one solution. I wear them all over the place. And I have people come up to me and say, gosh, I like your t-shirt. My go-to response is call your legislator and tell them you like my t-shirt, please. You know, and then we have conversations because there's still a little bit of stigma about stoners, you know, but there's a lot of science out there. And I don't hate on anybody that thinks, oh my God, a marijuana user is standing in front of me. I get it, because there's a lot of stigma. But we and minds of the citizens. And that's what we have been doing. So if you'll notice that there is 80% approval rating for medicinal cannabis in Wisconsin, it is bipartisan among the voters. I tell people when you meet someone, you flip a coin. Heads they smoke pot, tails they love someone who does. That is really, so if we can win, and that's what we've been doing. I've been 10 years really fighting hard, and it's hard in Wisconsin because unfortunately the state does not have citizens initiatives. So that's another reason why it is so hard for citizens to engage in democracy in this state especially, which is so heartbreaking because Wisconsin, we have progressive values that run through our soul, through the roots in every tree and every crop. We are progressive, and somewhere along the line, we elected someone that wants to divide and conquer us. And that is an issue, and it's an issue for a lot of people. But we all know what the state is. We are red and we are blue. We are team players. Do you ever meet a Green Bay Packer fan? They are die-hard to the end fans. And that is what we're dealing with in politics too. We have got the red team and the blue team, and these people are die-hard fans. They don't care what the policies are. Now when you start talking, Foxconn right now is kind of it's a sticking point for me. It really, when they passed it, it was just, are you kidding me? And when you start talking to people, it didn't matter what letter was next to their name. When you start talking about the implications of bringing a foreign corporation into the state of Wisconsin and having every man, woman, and child pay that corporation $1,200 to be our boss, and to bring in, what, a zookeeper to manage the herd of workers, that is not who Wisconsin is. We are proud. We are entrepreneurial. We are not pieces of some foreign corporation's automated manufacturing. It's going to be outdated. Are you kidding me? 10 years. In 10 years, somebody's going to paint a screen on the wall. There's no reason for that. I was a little disheartened after they voted. I was really disheartened that 3 of the Democrats voted with it. But Dennis Kucinich's speech has given me new hope that, perhaps if we can get together and we can get some candidates, if we can get a good governor, someone that can really focuses on the best interest of the citizens of this state, then maybe we can change that wall into real jobs for Wisconsinites. Jobs that really do provide not just the living wage, but for your soul. No one wants to go work for a foreign corporation that treats their employees so poorly that when they have an outbreak of mass suicide, their answer, instead of bringing in someone that has compassion, is to spend, how much money does it cost to put suicide nets up? I don't know, I didn't research that. It's a lot of money. I'm sure that zookeeper, I'm sure he charged a hefty fee to come in and tell his managers how to control his herd of workers. We're not herds of anything. Wisconsin, we are proud and we are strong, and I want good jobs in Wisconsin. I want 13,000 jobs, but I want 13,000 jobs that we can be proud of. So how do we do that? How do we get citizens engaged? It is not easy. There's 1,000 different ways you can do it. Talk to 1,000 different activists. They have 1,000 different ideas, and they're all great. So choose the one that works best for you. Public hearings are very, very important. You can go to the Wisconsin, I'm sure you guys already know this, right? I'm preaching to the choir. But when you start telling your friends that they can go to public hearings, have you guys been? It's so much fun. I love going to public hearings because they don't have a choice. They have to listen to you. You do have to sit through hours of scribble, and they try to wait you out. But I'm tough. A lot of my friends, they're tough. We'll wait hours just to say what we came to say. And that's very empowering. So also community board meetings, school board meetings, those kind of things. When you just go, what are you doing on Wednesday night at 7 o'clock? Go to your community board meeting and see what's going on in your thing. Now, in Juneau County, dying right now because I unfortunately have to move out of Juneau County because I was so looking forward to running for one of those county offices. Not in that county any longer, so I can't do it. But there are 67 seats in Juneau County that are available. Those seats could be filled by any one of you if you lived in the county. But a lot of citizens don't even know that. They have no idea. They don't realize that the people that are occupying those seats, they have been there for decades. And a lot of times, some seats, they don't even get, there's no candidates. They just have, okay, you want to do it? Now, I ran for village board member in Kendall, and I lost. My husband didn't even vote for me. But there's a big, long story. Anyhow, the point of the matter is that the council, I had 11 votes. I'm proud of those 11 votes. One was my mom. So, the council, they didn't really want me. In fact, the only reason that I didn't get on the board by proclamation is because they strong-armed some 80-year-old guy that really did not want to run anymore into running again, because there was 3 seats available. Because they, these guys have all been there for decades, so it's not easy. You think, a town of 500, you should be able to just walk in and smile and say, hey, I think I can be a great steward of your community, vote for me, and you think you get votes. That's not the way it works, unfortunately. There's clicks, there's, so it's really hard. So you just gotta keep fighting. Where are we on time?
I have no idea.
Yeah, me either. I don't wanna, because I can go on and on and on. Do you have any questions for me? Because, no? That's good. This man right here. No, the information that he has now, engaging citizens in democracy is not easy, but the very most important pillar of getting citizens engaged is the vote. The vote. We have got to vote, but they're taking our votes from us. They're sneaking them away. They're saying, hey, you know what, some people don't even vote. Don't knock on their doors, they don't vote. It's all about the vote. You know that little meme on Facebook where you got that one guy on the podium and there's like 50 people standing and he's on a cliff? That is our vote. So I'm gonna toss it over to you. Yeah, I'm tossing over to, so listen to what this guy says and try you.
I normally have a presentation about voting rights. I don't know how much time I have. From knowledge at this point, and it's about getting people engaged. It's about scaling up that engagement. So we start with the vote for that reason. If you're talking to someone, you're talking about politics, about running for office, about their community, and they don't even vote, the idea that the person that doesn't vote is going to be a candidate is, of course, very slim. So what you're looking for on the way to a candidate is as much engagement as you can possibly get. You're starting with voting. You're starting with just that. And you're going to keep moving up that scale. As far as voting and voting rights in Wisconsin, we know it's an active voting rights suppression state. We know the counties where we have issues, we have all of them. A lot of people don't know that they've been purged. So my first engagement, the first thing that I do, the first thing that I ask people to do with our Wisconsin Revolution is to give. Okay? Because quite frankly, if you're not genuine, if you don't really care about what you're doing and the person that you're talking to, it really doesn't matter what you're trying to convince them of or trying to motivate them to do. So you want to give information. I have a whole spiel that I do, but it's long, so I'm just going to cut through it. The Wisconsin Election Commission is a good reference for voting registration information in the state. That website, our Wisconsin Revolution, has, of course, a presentation on voter registration. We'll be publicizing as well. We do face-to-face voter registration training, but that's your first engagement with people civically. Do you or do you not vote? If not, why not? If so, great, then you're active. Well, let me tell you about my beliefs, my organization, and where we're at. You want to provide the one thing that people are going to be scared to be involved need initially is the idea that they're going to have some form of support in a referendum. That is the most important thing. Now, we want people to run for their 67 seats in Juneau County. How many of us come from orgs that could support the 67 candidates at the county? Not very many. So you need to be honest about your capacity. If you feel like you're from a county or a city organization that can support 1, 2, 3 candidates for specific seats, be honest about your capabilities and look for people for only those seats. Because the worst thing you can possibly do is oversell to someone and get them to run for office and then not support them. That's a big ask, and that's a big step in someone's life. And if you can't support that, then we don't want to do that. You have to take away that fear of being alone with it. People want also to be informed. Okay? How many people know there's 67 seats? Very few. What does that office even entail? And that's another place that I start. A lot of people don't have an interest in running for office or engagement because they don't understand, quite frankly, how the local government functions. And it's different from county to county, municipality to municipality. What does your alderman do? What does your county board do? What does your city clerk do? Why do you elect a coroner? What does your district attorney really do? And it's difficult to walk up to people, other adults, sometimes because when you get to an age you have no idea. What does your mayor really do? Do you have a city commissioner? How does your government function? You have to verse yourself in the context and in the structure of the community that you're trying to get someone to run it. For a county seat, for a city seat. So it's really about doing your homework yourself, so that if you're asked those questions, you can kick that out immediately and we put someone at ease with what they may be looking to do. And of course, you're not going to get someone to that point unless they actually understand the process and civic engagement. One of the things that we do in the county's first congressional district is someone says, well, you know, I vote, I care, I'm fired about the issues, we're all pressed, I don't have time. Fantastic. Here is every municipal meeting in the county, every committee, every elected official, all of their office hours, all the city council meetings, almost every single one. Something on that sheet will fit their schedule. Okay? And I'm talking about they because you're already engaged, and maybe some people in this room are going to run for office. And as far as specific support, that's really the first thing you need to do is look at what you can be engaged in, and do you know exactly what it is and what it takes to run that office. Sometimes people think, when I run for office, I can leave my job, I can leave my permanent job. There's some areas where you can be a city clerk 5, 10, 15 hours a week. You can maintain your lifestyle. You stay at home mom. Perfect. All the more insight. You should be on the school board. You have kids that are there. And if you have previous professional experience, that's where we find a lot of candidates in my neck of the woods. Daycare and childcare costs more than college. So from 0 to 4 or 5, depending on the way your pre-K or kindergarten is set up, it takes a lot of people that have a lot of skills out of the workforce. And I have a good friend who grew up with and she became an attorney. Even as an attorney, she's like, well, okay, I've got 2 kids, and I'm a 3rd kid. Let's do the math. Practicing law and paying for child care, it makes more sense for me to stay at home. I had a lawyer with free time, and I needed a lot of advice, and they love doing it. So look for that. Don't discount anyone in your search for a candidate because you think they might have not enough time or experience, not define people by what their current position is. Okay. I have the great problem of having too many people running for office in the first congressional district. You know, we have about 15 progressives that are running. Lloyd, we're trying to support. If everyone gets elected from our Wisconsin Revolution, no showing up for office because it's going to clear the bench. Everyone's going to be a politician. We can restart. I'll literally have to refill our chapter. And so now I'm not thinking, how do I get elected? It's like, how do I restart a chapter? Everyone leaves at once and gets elected in the spring. You know, we do these breakouts. It's probably going to get technical in a short period of time. But if there are seats that you know are vulnerable in your community, find out as much information you can, even if you're someone who already holds a seat, you want someone else to run for a seat next to yours. When do I have to file? Does it cost anything? Or the qualification of this position? Is there a clear definition? What's the history around it? And with us going through redistricting and lines being redrawn in Wisconsin, what happens if new positions open up that don't exist right now? What happens if there's a position in a neighboring district that now becomes a position in this district? You have to stay on top of that for people as well. And have them understand that timing is going to be a little tricky for them. Voter registration is the big one. Voter registration is kind of your introduction to political life for a lot of people. It's where you do your pop-ups, your potlucks. It's easy canvassing. It's easy engagement because it's nonpartisan. It's simple. You're going to go out and register people to vote. You're going to give you the skills to do that, talk to people about encouraging voter registration. And you're going to help everyone, period. You don't have to argue with anyone, to do anything where you take or ask from anyone. You're just giving and you're just engaging, And that's the best training ground for people, is just voter registration and information. But as far as getting people to run, it's the same as when you're going to fill any job or any position in an organization. You're looking for people who have the skills for that position and desire and time to do it. Usually you're minding your own organizations. That's what you should look first. Really. I mean, it's great that we have organizers, it's great that people are coming to events like this, such as today. But I meant what I said on stage, we should be the people that are running also. We have to lead by example. So I have to find something to run for. Eventually, because I can't just talk about it all the time. But again, not knowing how much time we have, what questions that people have? When you came into this breakout, you had something that you want to answer, information that you want to gain. So even if I can't do it in this breakout, because again, no idea what our schedule is right now.
Yeah, we just kind of got tossed
That's why
around.
everyone has my contact information. If you don't get to ask,
I don't know what did they come at?
I'm not
so if you
sure.
don't get your question asked today, you have my contact information. Email me. I'll get back in touch with you, and I'll make sure you get what you need. So I don't want anyone to leave the breakout like, well, I didn't get to ask a question. I didn't get what I specifically came there for, so I'm not going to get it. Or I'm going to make sure that happens either way. Okay? But who had?
Well, as far as getting new people to vote that have never voted before, I mean, I remember going as a kid with my father there, so I got exposed to that. But I worked as a poll worker over here in Marathon Park, and it was amazing last November how many people came in there and they hadn't voted before, and they said, I don't care about all that other stuff, I just want to vote for one person. So you have to figure how that went. But it's just amazing. A lot of people, the main thing is name recognition. I mean, we're sitting I'm watching MSNBC. I mean, this stuff is amazing. Foxconn, all you're talking about, I'm really interested in that too. But the majority of people, I want to go out there. It really bothers me that so many people do not vote. And I think, God, most of those people would probably vote the way I would like them to vote, and they're not showing up. So trying to get those people to come over the intimidation of it, and then trying to, be interested in these subjects at all. It's amazing. A lot of people.
Can I take
they
that
don't, they
one?
don't vote because they're intimidated.
Let me say
Yeah,
one thing on
yeah.
that first. We're all disappointed as a society, the engagement that we have.
Oh, wow.
But you're not going to talk to half the population of the United States.
Right.
Your best influence is going to be in your sphere where you are. And those are people that you're intimate with and you can approach on a regular basis, quickly, that you have some intimate knowledge of, that you can convince. Make sure the people in your sphere vote first. Okay, and you're going to hear from people that will have honest conversations with you, why they do, why they don't, what they like, what they don't like. What you said was convincing, what you said turned them off. That's your best practice, just be honest feedback. You start with strangers or in the community, you're going to get a lot of politics right now. That got easy to talk about for a little while, and then it got a lot harder to talk about the last few months. You know, if you walk with people in public and ask them what party they're in right now, a lot of people won't talk to you.
Start with the issues. Yeah.
And that's where I was going to go next.
Yep.
You're right. Everyone has something they care about. Where are they in life, and what can you find? And again, first congressional district, I get that a lot. You know, you have someone's going to go out and vote, and they're going to vote for the Democratic mayor that's been there for 30 years, and then they're going to vote for Paul Ryan on the same day at the same time. We get that a lot. And that's what we talk about.
In real life, it's crazy.
The Band-Aid and everything else, you know, you might get someone that votes Republican at the top of the ticket. All of my local officials are Dems or progressives. All of them. But I have Paul Ryan as my congressman. Scott Walker wins the gubernatorial elections. But then they vote for Tammy Baldwin. But that's who we have. So you can't start this conversation always about who you're voting for. It's just, I just need you to get out and vote.
Why
period.
are you
Right.
going to vote?
Yes.
Yes, it's the
Yes.
It's always discouraging though, is saying, well, there's nobody there I want to vote for, so I'm not voting.
There's
You know, you
always,
really- I know, but,
there's
you know,
always
that's what you-
something.
That is true, yeah.
And you have to remind people how much is on the ballot every time they go for the name recognition. They're going to hear a handful of names because that's all people can afford to advertise. Remind them of the positions. You don't care about your roads, you don't care about your schools, you don't care about your local police department, the DA, you don't care about crime in your neighborhood. Make it personal for them. They don't have to care about the rest of the world. Make them, it's a selfish person, if their responses are self-centered, make it self-centered. I want you to vote for you, not for specifically the issues of the greater good. You know, people just, quite frankly, aren't there right now.
This lady's ahead of me.
She's ahead of me.
Well, I just wanted to share, I was asked by the, I guess it was the State Democratic Party, to do some issue canvassing about 2 or 3 months ago. And I said, well, I knew it was going to be. And I said, well, okay. She says, it's only going to be a sample. Okay, and so I went to a list of known Democratic voters, right? You wouldn't believe what I found. I mean, you know, it was very interesting, but you're right, you start with the issues, and this was issue-based. And so it ranged all the way from people who knew what they were interested in to an 18-year-old, that's the voting age, right? He was apparently just graduated from high school, had never voted. He turned 18 just in time to vote for, you know, and his father was in the garage listening to what I was talking to the young man about. It was a very interesting situation. But I said, well, you know, what are the things that are you know, what do you think of yourself as a voter? You know, and I tried to, you know, get him to say something. I didn't want to tell him anything. You know, what are your issues? And so I'm accustomed to working with young people, so I could get a little up on that. You know, and so he started to say some stuff, and it was not, I mean, he didn't even care. And he had a buddy with him, and the buddy was tuned in a little bit more. So it was a very interesting dynamic for me to say, you know, and the father was in the, I said, well, what about health? What about your health? And he says, well, some people die. He's 18, yeah.
Well, yeah, he's 18, but also you have to think about something, and we talked about this at a panel this previous week. We had Colton Anderson's a great elected official. He's 23 years old from Beloit. Fantastic. But Kenosha, Wisconsin is also the #1 county in the state for fatalities in the heroin. So you're talking to a lot of young people, and you know, we have a different memory than they do. Yeah. I'm going to segue into the canvassing and kind of member and volunteer minding also. They don't remember when GM and Chrysler were producing their jobs. They don't remember when college was affordable. They don't remember any of this. They don't remember not being at war. You have to think about that. They've had a war in Iraq and Afghanistan and the Middle East against terrorism their entire life. They don't remember 9/11 or the world before that. They don't remember good times. It's been struggle and war and fear and divisiveness their entire memorable life. So to get them engaged in that is a little bit more difficult. And that's why I go back to the personal thing. Do you ever want to go to school? Do anything? What do you want to do? Sometimes you're going to get nothing. Yeah. Well, eventually you might. Eventually you will. And you think your dad is going to give you $60,000 to go to college when you do find what you want to do with your money? Or shouldn't that be affordable? Or shouldn't you be able to make enough money now to save and do what you want? Don't you want to get out of your parents' house? Kind of, sort of, maybe, someday.
Adulting is hard though.
You might not get that out of them the first time, but at least you plant that seed and you left something in that house.
I'm hoping, you know. And I try to leave them with some questions. Right. You know, I don't try to answer the questions, just raise the questions.
And then as far as eventually finding candidates, you know, all that mining only comes from volunteers first. It's very rare you're going to get someone who just starts cold, shows up to your org and go, hi, I want to run for, I think I want to run for mayor.
But when you do get that person, pay attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, pay attention to those people.
And then sit them down and warn them about what they're getting into. But that's rare. Someone's just going to knock on the door and say, hi, I'm Bob. I don't know anything about politics, but I want to run for mayor next year. No, they're going to come in, they're going to get comfortable, they're going to volunteer first, that's what you want them to do. So you're looking for people you can pull in as you're doing that issues canvassing. Once you get someone, well, you care about healthcare, so do we, and this is who I am and who we're with. This is what we're trying to do. Do you want to help us with that? Well, you know what? Check us out online. Or here's my card. Or the Facebook page. Or here's a schedule when we're having meetings. You can show up sometime. You're looking for that first. So each candidate started off normally as someone that was cold approached or walked in because you're over the public and just wanted to see what was going on. You're not going to get someone that just falls from the sky. And I'd be scared to death if somebody walked in and said, hi, I'm, you know, Jane, I want to run for governor. I'm like, hey. Might need security for that.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about getting on the county board. Okay. Yeah. I'm thinking, all right, as a Green Party person, I can bring these Green Party guys to the county and, you know, enlighten everybody, right? So I went to the town hall chair and I said, what should I be working on? What are my issues? And he said, oh, yeah, loss of local control and clean water. He says, talk about that. That's what's got our people in. So, like every chance I get, I raise these values, grassroots democracy, local control and autonomy, and community-based economic development, as opposed to Foxconn, a giant corporation riding to save your community from poverty. But what I found is that lack of common frame of reference, even with progressive people. When you say that Wisconsin has become a corporate state, right? People don't, that doesn't compute, right? When you say we've become an oligarchy, you know, what does that mean? What it means is that you can't even, now with the high capacity wells that we talked about in the environmental, a local community no longer has the power to say, you can only have so many high capacity wells running in this county because agribusiness corporations have overridden your will. Right? And in every issue that comes up, you can find a way in which corporations, by installing this one-party rule, and that have trumped. There's 115 different pieces of separate legislation that take away local control and restrict localities' ability to raise their own funds, right? So
That's a great point.
People don't get that.
Right, but I'm gonna cut you off right there for this reason.
Yes.
That was really scary. And if I don't know anything about politics, you walk up and say that, you seem really informed, but you seem way out ahead of me. And adults especially don't like to go, I'm gonna get in this guy is talking about complex issues that are really important. I have no idea what he's saying. Therefore, it's hard for me to be passionate and engaged because I don't know what you're talking about.
And no one likes the dumb.
Yeah.
So that's why we need people on the school boards. Because the reason that we don't have people engaged is because they were never taught to be engaged. There was a social contract right along the time that the Don't Talk About Politics is we just go ahead and live our lives, and there are these magic people that will run everything and take care of everything.
Right.
So that contract has been broken. You know, we are not allowed, now we can't just let these people do what they do because they're trashing our planet. So we have got to rewrite that contract, and we've got to start with the younger generation and let them know that they need to be good community stewards. They need to get involved. They need to listen to their neighbors. And you know, don't do it all the time. No one can. You do what you can when you can. And that is the easiest way to start an activist. That is the easiest way to get somebody engaged is, hey, you got 10 minutes to make some phone calls? You know, I can show you how to use, you know, the town hall on your Facebook app, and you can call your legislator. Doing those little things, they empower people. So you get them to do just the tiniest bit, and then the next time they're like, oh, hey, you know what, that was great. I actually, the t-shirt story, my husband and I were in the grocery store, and somebody said they liked my husband's t-shirt. And I'm like, oh, perfect opportunity. There was a group of them, and then there was another group and I started getting loud. I'm like, okay, so check out what Facebook got. Do you guys know what the Facebook, do you guys have Facebook? So Facebook has a town hall app. And I show these people right in the middle of the grocery store, and I've got like 10 people, I mean, it's ridiculous, you know, but I'm comfortable doing that. Not everybody is, I mean, it's not. So, but those people right there in the grocery store got on Facebook, got on their town hall, called their legislators, and said, hey, that guy's wearing a really cool t-shirt, and it says one plant, one solution. You know, we could do these things, and one of those solutions is jobs. You know, so when you can do that, when you can make it fun, because nobody wants the dribble, nobody wants the sausage making. When you want it, you can make it exciting. And then also the voting, there is such a thing as vote shaming, and it works. There's studies been done on it, yes, there really are. So like when you didn't vote, what? Like gently, some people can be assholes, don't be an asshole, but like you really didn't vote? Why? Did like, you know, just get their reasons of why they didn't feel like that number one tool as a citizen that you are granted, that was fought for so many people, unless you were a white property owning man. People died for that vote. And you didn't use it? What the hell is wrong with you? That works. You gotta have a little bit of charisma, because sometimes you can piss people off. I don't wanna hear that.
So be careful.
You know, so be careful. But do what you're comfortable with, but it does work, you know, to really get people excited. Because it is exciting, and it is an exciting time to live. And it is scary. But functions like these, this Grassroots Festival. You know, we got the 10th annual Granddaddy Grassroots coming up in March. The Fighting Bob Fest, those things, there's that fire, that smolder in Wisconsin, and if we could blow on that and get that to ignite, because really it's exciting. So if you can make fun, sometimes it's not, be honest, you know, it's not gonna always be fun, but sometimes it really can be so very much fun, guys. So that's my advice to you.
Another bit of advice, avoid acronyms.
Oh,
Plainly speak out what you're talking about. We're all very used to it. We're all very used to the accurate language and the names. County board member so-and-so, mayor so-and-so, state rep so-and-so. Sadly enough, most people don't know who that is. If you walk around today and ask people who your alderman is, what they don't know.
right.
So if you
No,
bring
well,
up-
lest you think that I'm just like an ideologue.
No. I'm in terms of
I went
engaging
on,
people.
I went on Citizen Lobby Day, Water Lobby Day, in Denver, at the Capitol, 450 people, all over the state, right? And I knew there was a county board member from Portland County with me, and I know there were some Republicans on that bus. We went down there to lobby against this high-capacity wells, where they call it death by 1,000 straws, sucking all the water out of the ground. And there were people, everybody from the most sophisticated to brand new at this. And we went down there and attempted to lobby people like Patrick Teston, who everyone knew had been bought by agribusiness in order to get their bills through, right? But when we take the bus ride back, everybody was all like, they sure were trying not to listen to us, were they? No, they didn't hear us. No, they're not going to vote our way. So you
Yes,
see,
and I don't want to, I hear the bell. and I
Yeah,
feel
yeah. I
I
had no idea there was gonna be a bell, that's
oh my God.
There it is.
Much to serve.
We got it.
You had so much fun with the bell.
I know. We all know the bell.
Not enough time.
No idea there was gonna be a
Well,
bell.
they did at this
Not
point.
enough time.
Yeah.
So just to close, that was a good point as far as going down there together. Take someone you know with you. That's the easiest thing. Even if a person that you take isn't necessarily going to run or become engaged, you might get someone else. That's the reason that I stay at doors so long when I canvass. I might not get you. Husbands and wives disagree so often. Are there any other voters in the house? Can I talk to somebody else? Can I leave this here? Oh no? Okay, I'll leave the door anyway. Your wife's gonna love it. Keep going, be politely relentless, but as far as getting people engaged, I mean, you have to genuinely care about what you're doing. So if you're lukewarm, you can't expect them to be hot about it. So find your passion, the thing that you care about.
Always be raising their consciousness.
And you know, you have to be positive about it, believe that you can really make a change in it, that they can make a change in it, that they should, can be engaged. You have to be encouraging. You're a coach, and you're looking for people to get out there.
The amount of information that this guy has is a treasure trove. Use it, tell your friends about it. His information really is vital to getting citizens engaged in our democracy.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you guys. They ring the bell.
I have my cards here. I'm just going to set them up if anyone wants to.
Okay, folks, we're
And then I'm gonna go
going back now to the main area, so stay tuned. Bye-bye.
Presentation.
Yeah, I guess that's next.
I don't know. Yeah, we got flipped all around. There wasn't fancy agenda. That's all. Thank you.
I'm glad you got to today.
Thumbs up. Yes.
David here, David Bowen.
You'll get up here, right on the other side.
Tammy Wood, are you here? Jessica Love. Andy Gronick, are you up here? Yeah, Andy. Dana Walks. Mike McCabe. Everybody's AWOL.
Andy's here.
There's Andy. Here comes Andy. And Tony. Is Tony still here? Come on up, Andy, and grab a chair. We're just going to pause a few minutes. I'd like to give the people from downstairs a chance to get up here.
And it's just your eyes. Well, there's Dorothy at the downstairs. Yeah, so they're up here. One person, as long as was anybody from Christine's?
I didn't actually be out there.
Christine's room might still be.
Come on up, Mike. Tammy, come on up.
Tim's supposed to be up here too.
Well, we're going to start with, we're going to work our way down, so I'm actually going to start with, okay, people could, testing. Oh, excuse me. It works and then it doesn't work. If people would come and grab a chair, I'd like to get going. Come on up front. Okay, we're going to rotate our schedule a little bit in that Kathleen has a commitment in Shawano. She needs to get on the road. So we're going to take her a little bit out of order for that reason. So at this point, I would present Kathleen Weinhaut, Senator from the 31st Senate District. Kathleen Weinhaut.
Thank you very much. Get my notes here organized. Imagine that you have a loved one in the hospital and night falls and you kiss your loved one goodnight and you walk the long corridor and out into the big parking lot and you wonder, will they be better tomorrow? Will they be worse tomorrow? Will they be the same? You probably never wonder, is that nurse that works the night shift gonna be licensed? There's a bill, there are two bills that were just voted out of committee last week on a committee that I serve that would set up a process to de-license professionals and occupations. It doesn't, if I'm telling you something that you've never heard of before, don't be surprised. because nobody in the state has heard of it unless they happen to have read the 2 columns I wrote on this. Because the combined hearing in the Senate and the Assembly happened on the same day as the massive Foxconn hearing happened. And all the reporters and all the TV stations and all the people around the state that do press all went to hear the Foxconn hearing. And that hearing, an all-day hearing in the Capitol, to me, it was the starkest example of what's happened to the Wisconsin legislature. On one side, there were 5 ideological conservative groups, several of them who flew in from Washington, D.C. or Arlington, Virginia. And on the other side were over 100 people in Wisconsin who said, don't take away my occupation or professional licensing. And I started to do research on why this was happening and who was behind this and who these groups were. And I kept finding that the groups were funded by the Koch brothers and the Bradley Foundation. Groups with names like Institute for Law or Liberty, or the Institute for Justice, or the Mercatus Center, who set out a policy word for word in a document that was published almost right before the hearing we had in August of 2017. That was worded almost identical to a budget provision that the governor put in his budget in February. Almost identical. And the bill that was going through, that now passed out of committee and could be voted out by the full Senate by the end of this month, the bills had language that was the same when I started digging as a bill that was put forth by the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC. One of the processes that they laid out in one of these 2 bills was to allow people who were not trained in a profession to set up a self-certification registry. So Kathleen wants to become a plumber, and I'm not a very good plumber. I can become a plumber by saying that I am part of this self-certification registry and use the title state certified on my marketing campaign. This is happening in other states, but the only other state that's come close to passing it and making it state law is Indiana. So, Wisconsin used to be the laboratory of democracy when it came to progressive ideas. We've now become the laboratory of the ideologically conservative ideas. And when I asked the chair of the committee, I said, what problem are we solving with this bill, and why are we doing this? He couldn't say anything except, I don't want any fence me out legislation. Okay, so that's good enough to get rid of licensing. The whole experience reminded me of why I am running for governor. Because I am not going to roll over and play dead to the Koch brothers. I'm running for governor to put people first, to put people at the center of state policy, to put people at the center of budget priorities. And when I think about the priorities now, it is exactly the opposite. Where the state's been giving hundreds of millions of dollars to companies that couldn't even be independently verified as creating a job, and now the state's given $3 billion to a guy who's worth $10.5 billion already. At the same time, the state is starving all those pieces of state government that put people first, whether it's fixing the funding formula, providing help for the mentally ill and people that are addicted to substances, putting the roads back in good shape, which for many, many years they always were. When I think about what people first means, the first thing I think of is people don't have money in their pockets. Wisconsin is 18th worst in the country in terms of average wages and salaries. Worse than Georgia, Louisiana, Missouri, and Tennessee. And speaking of Tennessee, I believe in free tech college and 2-year UW campus college tuition. And the idea didn't come from me. The idea came from the Republican governor of Tennessee. And I have a bill that I have drafted, modeled on that legislation in Tennessee, that pays fully for this program using the same amount of dollars that are in the state budget right now. The same amount of dollars. You know, thinking about putting people first and what has happened that has not put people first, the first thing I think of is when the governor dropped the bomb on teachers and public employees. Talk about not putting people first. You don't drop bombs on people. And the fallout from that bomb is still affecting us, whether it's teachers with low morale, teachers that are retiring, people not going into education, professors that are leaving the University of Wisconsin and taking their grant money with them, state employees that we can't keep because they're leaving. Just this week, on Tuesday, we're going to have a big hearing on the problems at the King Veteran Home. Well, one of the big problems that showed up in the audit is they can't keep staff. They keep leaving. Why? Well, how would you like to work for a guy who drops bombs on you? When you think about it, that's the opposite of putting people first. And it was Act 10 that motivated me to do something that I've called, over the years, an alternative to the governor's budget. Funding policies and priorities in a different way using the same money in the budget. And for 4 different cycles, I put together an alternative to the governor's budget. And actually, this cycle, it was the easiest it's ever been. Because one of my priorities in putting people first is to change the way we pay for schools, which now is prejudiced against both urban and rural people, kids, because of the way it's put together. And we can change the funding formula. And this time when I did my alternative, I found that it was much easier because what the governor did was put a lot of money into schools, but he didn't fix the problems. He put it outside the funding formula instead of fixing it. He had the money, he didn't do it. He could have done it with the same amount of money. Another example of putting people first is healthcare. We know how to fix healthcare. Every other industrialized nation has done it. Healthcare is the reason I ran in 2006. It is what drives me to get up in the morning. There are people all over the state that still don't have health insurance, and a lot of people that are paying a lot of money for really awful insurance. And this is a solvable problem. There are many steps to getting to where I want to be, but the first one is to create our own Wisconsin-based marketplace, something that Minnesota has done and that many other states have done. The second one is so simple. Governor, will you please take the Medicaid expansion money? Take it. Because when you take it, you release us of spending on almost $300 million, $286 million in cash in this budget. That because their feds will be covering somebody we're already covering, that's money that needs to be put into alternatives to incarceration. It needs to be put into mental health and substance abuse treatment. We should not be imprisoning the people that we are imprisoning who are there because of an addiction. We know how to change these problems. It's no accident that Minnesota has half of the people incarcerated as Wisconsin. Because years ago, they put together a community-based mental health and substance abuse network of services. It's something we need to do and we should have done years ago, and today is the best day to get started on it, to not wait. And when I think about what we do to bring healthcare to everyone, create that marketplace, but creating that marketplace allows us to do something that many of you support. which is to have a public option in Wisconsin. Because if we have our own marketplace, we don't have to go to the federal government and say, please, please, please. If you are from the western part of the state, like the folks that I represent, you probably heard a lot about Governor Dayton's idea to create a version of Minnesota Care for all, allowing basically people on the marketplace to buy into the Medicaid program. We could do that here in Wisconsin. It's an example of what it means to put people first. And when I think about what else putting people first means, it means maintaining our infrastructure. Recognizing that climate change is real. And hiring back those scientists that the governor fired and putting them to work to help us deal with the problems that climate change is creating in Wisconsin right now. Right now. When I think about putting people first, it's preserving the air and water so that everyone has an opportunity to enjoy it. Which means, of course, fully funding with state dollars, like they used to be, our state parks, instead of raising the fees and raising them so an average person can't afford it anymore. And putting people first means helping people with the support services they need to be able to have opportunities. Whether it is help with child care. I have a physical therapist who helps me, and she said she's spending half of her salary on infant child care. And when I started to research this, I realized that Wisconsin is the third worst in terms of affordable infant-based child care. That's a problem the state can help fix. Now, many of these things that I've talked about and other ideas that I have will only work if we make local government our partner in providing these services. And we have seen, since 2011, policy after policy that has taken away local powers. Instead, the state needs to make local government and tribes our partner in providing the services, because they are on the front line. They know about the problem more than anybody else. And the tribes need the resources that the state has not been providing. And this local government needs the resources that the state has not been providing. Now, all of these ideas, many of them I've written about in the alternative budget, and all of them show a new direction. The dollars are the same, but the direction is different. And when I think about what my vision for Wisconsin looks like, it's a state where we build from the bottom up, not the top down. It's a state where everybody has a thriving community to live in, to play in, to start a new business in, to recreate, have great amenities like parks, where we all chip in, we all work together, and then we all share the rewards. And everyone's participation and differences are honored and respected. Now, putting people first in state policy is going to start with putting people first in campaigns. Because it's local people that know what works in their neighborhood. And far too long, the state has run campaigns from not even Madison, but places like Boston and Brooklyn. It's the local people that know what works. It's the local people that have seen good ideas, helping them win, and not so good ideas, not helping them win. And when I think about what that means, I think about first understanding why the Democrats lost in 2016. Some of you know my rep, Chris Dano. He lost by 1,000 votes, one of the last few Democrats, rural Democrats in the legislature, in the assembly especially. And I started on a journey when he lost to look at the details of why he lost. And I physically sat in the county in Trempealeau at the county courthouse and counted new voter registrations, physically. And each one of those new voter registrations represented likely a new voter for Trump. I counted 1,666, which is about 12% of the vote in Trempealeau County. It was a 24% of the vote in the county seat in Whitehall. Oftentimes I'm asked, You can't go up against Scott Walker because you need to learn how to talk Trump light. You're too progressive. You need to learn how to talk angry white men. Well, I am here to tell you that's just not true. What my research demonstrated is that there are two different groups of people going to the polls. There are the people who voted for Obama in 2012, and there are people who voted for Trump in 2016, and they are different people. You all know that the voter turnout was down, which tells you if a whole lot of new Trump voters showed up, a whole lot of Democrats stayed home. And in my world, in the West and the North, that's exactly what happened. Hillary got slightly more than a regular, what we call a non-presidential year, slightly more. Nowhere near a presidential year. So what does that mean? The candidate that is successful for governor needs to talk about policies that make a difference in people's lives. We don't need to talk less progressive, less democratic. We need to talk more progressive and more democratic. And when I think about what election day looks like, there's nobody on election day that should say they all sound the same. I couldn't make a choice because they all sound the same. Because our message should be so clear, so compelling, and so relevant that nobody gets to election day without saying, this is what the Democrats stand for. Now that gives all of us a mission to accomplish. That gives all of us a grab your clipboard, lace up your boots, let's start getting to work. Because frankly, the Democrats are not going to win with a lot of money. We've seen that, we've gone down that road as a state over and over again. Sure, we need money, but we're never going to beat the money they have. But we, ladies and gentlemen, are the party of the people. Let us make that task, that slogan, our task. Let's make it our mission. Let's embody being the party of the people. And let's put people first in everything we do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, next up on our agenda, we got to keep moving along here. We're going into the regular agenda for the political speakers, and we have David Bowen first for 5 minutes, and then we're going to Martha for 10 minutes, and then we're going to Tammy Wood for 5 minutes. Okay, so we'll keep moving along. We got everybody on deck here. Here you go, David.
What's up, David?
Glad you're with us.
Thank you so much. Make some noise for the Rural Caucus, everybody, please. First annual Wausau Grassroots Festival. I am State Representative David Bowen. I am first Vice Chair of the Democratic Party, and I'm honored to be here. I'm excited to be here. It's been a while before I had a chance to get to a district that went majority Trump. Okay? So I need to make sure that I'm doing that even more, because that means my message of what I have to say has to reach the right people. Right? We have some progressives in this room. Make some noise. I saw my good friend Mandy Wright, who ran for State Assembly last year. Can we make some noise for her, please? I want to make sure I am very respectful to the lives that were lost just recently. Can we have a moment of silence for the victims, please? Thank you so much. It is so important that we recognize that we are losing lives in this country. And sometimes we forget that there's a mass shooting in our country every day. That we are losing a lot of people due to inaction, mostly. And we get caught up in this extreme debate where you can either support having a constitutional right to be able to bear firearms and having common sense. And today, I think we have a chance to really push that, and it really comes in line with 2018. because we definitely need to make sure that we are reaching communities and making sure that they understand that we're not coming to take away anybody's firearms. We're coming to demand that we can have safe communities, that we can have individuals that will responsibly be able to carry a firearm and not use that firearm the wrong way, taking out innocent lives. If you know me, you know that I get a chance to represent a very diverse district. I get a chance to represent Milwaukee and the village of Shorewood, which is a suburb right on the lakefront of Milwaukee. And it's really awesome the amount of community we have in our district. We get folks to agree that come from very different backgrounds, that live in very different kinds of houses, mansions on the lakefront, multi-family homes on the other side of the district, folks that make probably well over 6 figures, folks that are working poor. And we can all agree that there is a real culprit that is out, that we need to make sure that we address. And it's been affecting a lot of our communities. And I think in 2016, we were able to see folks that were so frustrated with politics that they were able to say, screw this, I don't even want to participate. I don't even want to be a part of something that really won't even benefit me in the end. And we do have that chance to change that dynamic, to really show that we have elected officials with Democrats on their name that are willing to push on real issues that affect real people. You can make some noise for that. So I only got 5 minutes, and I don't want to take all of it, because there are some very, very important folks that you have to hear from, some that are running for governor, one named Martha Lanning that runs the Democratic Party, and I want to make sure I get out of the way, but I do want to talk about some of the things that we need to do in 2018, and sometimes having that reality of what we're really dealing with and coming back, not being on the moon, but getting back to reality. We have to highlight how some voters feel. And we have to recognize that. In a recent interview with some Trump voters, these were some of their responses. They said, we're living in poverty, or we're used to living in poverty. And they said, people on benefits are driving better trucks than us. They said, illegal aliens are not paying taxes, so we got to cut the strings off. They said, people making decisions are not thinking of people who are like me. And it's interesting that when I go in communities in Milwaukee or I go into communities in Marathon County, everywhere I can find people that all feel left behind. Isn't that interesting? People commonly feel that government is not there to actually fix the problems that are affecting them. And it's important that we recognize that, because people are definitely dealing with a lot of pain right now. They're dealing with a lot of hurt right now. And we, as Democrats and progressives, have a chance to change that paradigm, have a chance to make sure that people actually hear us highlight the fact that the corporation that made the decision to leave your town screwed you over and screwed us over too. Right? They actually have to hear us say that when we removed our policies that put at threat the clean water that you used to be able to drink and the clean air you used to be able to breathe, that was wrong. We have to make sure that we get back to the basics. And I think we have that chance. I think we have some awesome people running for governor, don't you think? And anybody hear that? You hear that? You know what that sound is? It's an open primary. Right? The Democratic Party of Wisconsin will not be putting their hands on the scale to benefit any candidate. We won't be telling you this is the person you're voting for. It's not happening. because we are excited that we have leadership that's focused on people first, that's focused on the grassroots first. And we're going to put the power in where it really should be. It's not going to be in Brooklyn, and it's not going to be in Madison. It's going to be where you are. It's going to be where you are. And this election cycle will definitely be much different, and we're excited about that. We have organizers, and I'm sure Martha will get into this. We have organizers that are building relationships on the grassroots level, on a one-on-one level, earlier than we did before with the coordinated campaign. And we're excited that those young millennials are making their way around the state, and we will make sure that we get a chance to make sure that real grassroots organizing that has to happen will happen, and that we will build relationships, not just asking for people's votes, but making sure that we are accountable to the things that they need us to fight for. So thank you so much, grassroots.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Okay, we're happy that Martha is with us and give us an update on what's happening in the Democratic Party in the state of Wisconsin. Thank you, Martha.
Thank you, everybody. It's so great to see so many wonderful people here today. People who really care about what's happening in our state. People who want to be sure that every child, no matter what zip code, no matter if they live in an rural, an urban, or a suburban area, is getting a quality education. The education that will allow them to provide for a family and to save for retirement. We want to be sure that workers are being paid a fair wage and we stop the attacks, like on prevailing wage and on other, the right to work, all of these things that are attacking working class families. We want to be sure that our environment is clean and healthy, and that our wonderful state, that so many people come here for tourism because of how beautiful our state, that continues, and that we don't have to worry about whether our children should be drinking the water or breathing the air, or all of us being affected by that. We want to be sure that we empower entrepreneurism in our state, because we know that when entrepreneurs start their businesses, they keep their businesses here. They don't take them somewhere else. So instead of being dead last, 50th out of 50 states in the nation, we should be working on empowering more Wisconsinites to start businesses, instead of having Foxconn, who's a Taiwanese company, getting all of our tax money. So we need to do more, and I'm thrilled to see all of you are here, and this is what the party is doing. Well, first thing is, we got one heck of a primary that's going to go on here. We've got great gubernatorial candidates that are stepping up, and they're talking about the issues, and you're going to hear from them today. You're going to hear about things that people can do to make people's lives better, and that's what our party is all about, creating opportunity and helping make everybody's lives better, not just those at the top. So we're thrilled about that. Second, we're thrilled about all the activists around our state. The Indivisible, the Our Revolution, book clubs, hunting clubs. There's all kinds of people all over the state of Wisconsin that are talking about the issues that really matter to them. And that's how the party is making a little bit of a change here. In the past, we reached out to our county party and our members, and we worked through them. What we're doing now is we have a state organizing director, and we have 6 organizers on the ground, and they are reaching out to activists all over the state. They are absolutely working with our county parties, but they are also working and connecting with the Our Revolution groups, or the book clubs, or the hunting groups, or the Indivisible groups. Anybody that's out there, we want to connect with them so that we can share that, hey, we're going to be going out and doing a day of activism, or, oh, hey, you're looking for information about DACA? We'd be happy to provide those talking points to you. Or there's an environmental thing. Can Martha put that out in her update for you? We want to be promoting things that you're doing, and we want to make that connection so that later when we have something going on, we'll share it with everybody and people can get active about the things that they really care about. This is President Obama's model. He came out the year before his election, and he got into communities all over the state of Wisconsin, and he found those neighborhood activism teams, those teams that were organizing around an issue they care about. And those teams stuck together. When we came out and said, hey, we want to connect with these, we found teams that were organized years ago that were still active. And that's the kind of model we need. We know that when you're organizing around something you care about, you'll keep organizing, and that's what we want to do. So I am thrilled to see all the groups here, all the people who care about the people here in Wisconsin, all the people who want to make a difference. We want to work with you. If you don't know who your organizer is, I highly recommend you check out our website, wisdems.org. You go under the party section and you'll see staff, and all of our organizers are listed there. We can share with you what areas they organize, because we have split up the entire state of Wisconsin. We have an organizer for every corner. I'll tell you one great story. One of our organizers, she was sitting in Amherst in a little coffee shop because she needed internet. And she was sitting in Amherst and she was making phone calls, and some ladies walked over and said, "We heard what you were telling people. Can you share with us what you're doing?" And now we have a neighborhood team right there in Amherst from these ladies who overheard her talking to some people in the coffee shop. That's the kind of stuff that we want to have happening, and we're really excited about it. We're thrilled to have the caucuses that are stepping up. I don't know if you guys all know, we got a great progressive caucus that's launched. They got 400 people strong. Matthew Larange and Tammy are working with that. We want to empower the voice of all of you, because when we all work together, when every team gets out there and we partner together, that's when we're going to turn things around. So thank you for organizing this. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you for helping highlight our candidates. Thank you for helping us find more candidates. I hope you're all thinking about running for office. There's a place for all of us. Thank you for everything you do, because with your help, we are going to send a very strong message that Democrats and the Wisconsinites are not going to tolerate what's happening in our state anymore. We're going to bring it back to the progressive Wisconsin we all remember, where an economy worked for everyone, not just those at the top.
Thank you, Martha. Okay, next, Tammy, tell us about the Progressive Caucus.
Thank you. Thank you, Grassroots Wausau. Nicely done. And thank you to the organizers of this event. These things are not easy. I don't know if you ever put on an event like this, but it takes a lot of manpower. And like I told Dennis, we're not paid. So we know how hard it is to do this. I am the vice chair of the Progressive Caucus. Now, when we wanted to start a Progressive Caucus within the Democratic Party, we were asked why. Why does your voice need a caucus? There's the LGBT caucus, there's the Black caucus, there's the Native American caucus, and there's a few other caucuses. Embarrassingly, I'm not familiar with all of them. But why did the progressive voice need a caucus within the Democratic Party? 2016. The voice of the people was not listened to. You were ignored. And look what happened. President Trump, God bless him, he's ours now. We have to keep him. That is unfortunate. However, God bless President Trump, because look at all of you here today. Look at all of you here. Look at the Progressive Caucus. The 400 people that packed that room that said, hell no, we need to do something, and we need to do something now. So that's what we're here for. We're here to help you do something, because we all know it's not easy. I started in cannabis activism. I didn't start in politics. I didn't even realize I had a seat at the table. I just didn't know. So that's our goal. The Progressive Caucus, our goal is to reach out to the citizens, to let them know that their voice matters, that they have a seat at the table, that our legislators have to listen to them. It is their damn job. We're done being silent. We are taking it to the town halls, to the public hearings, to the grassroots festivals. Now Wisconsin has a lot of amazing grassroots festivals. I'm learning about them now. We've got the granddaddy of grassroots festivals in March. So start telling your friends about that now, because this is really important for all of us to get excited, to have a good time, to meet each other, to do the fellowship with the rest of Wisconsin. We're not all different. There's different parts of this state. There's the rural part and the urban part, but we have so much in common. We are proud Wisconsinites, and we're taking our state back one town, one village, one city board at a time. We're getting our elected officials into office. Damn straight. Woo! Yep, go ahead. Make some noise. Yep. We're getting people, just like you, regular people that just want to be great stewards of their community and public servants to do the best interests of Wisconsinites. That's who we're encouraging, and we are very blessed because we have so many amazing Democratic candidates for governor, and a lot of people are asking the Progressive Caucus, who are you backing? We are backing every one of them. They all have amazing talents. They can all take on Scott Walker. What we're waiting for them to do is we're waiting for them to say to the Wisconsinites, why are you going to vote for me? What do you need from me to get your vote? Because that's their responsibility, to reach out to you for your vote. And they're doing that. They're coming to, how many Democratic candidates are at this Grassroots Festival right here? I don't think I would have seen that last gubernatorial election. They're here and they're listening, and that's the job of the Progressive Caucus, is to make sure that the legislator listens to the voice of the people, because the voice of the people is very progressive here in Wisconsin. So thank you all again. Thank you all to the candidates. Thank you, Nate.
Thank you, Tammy. Okay, moving on. Thank you, Tammy. Now we're going to go to our Supreme Court candidates. So we're going to start with Tim Burns. So come on up, Tim.
Nate, thank you so much. So, hi everybody. Let me say first things first. I've been told that my voice shakes a bit. Even though my voice shakes, when I join the Wisconsin Supreme Court next August, I will be an unshakable champion of progressive values. Let me tell you what. So my parents were born in rural Mississippi during the Depression. My father was forced out of school by poverty in the 5th grade, and my mother suffered the same fate in the 10th grade. But I was lucky. I grew up after groups like this one had built the greatest democracy and the strongest, broadest middle class in the history of the planet. That democracy and that middle class economy allowed me, a shy kid with a shaky voice, who was a grandson of Mississippi sharecroppers, to become one of the top 25 lawyers in the country at suing giant insurance companies. But for the last 40 years, a number of right-wing judges have been chipping away at the laws that protected that democracy and protected that middle-class economy. By 2008, the protections had become so weak that we suffered the most horrific financial crisis since the Depression. A financial crisis that affected every one of us, but some people made money off of. By 2016, though, even worse happened. The protections for democracy had become so weak that we elected a petty Twitter addict to lead the world's greatest democracy. That's why I'm running for the Supreme Court. Now, because my message is a political one, that our system is rigged and we need to get our middle-class democracy back, people have accused me of politicizing the courts. So let me speak to that for a moment. No surprise to this room, our courts are political and always have been. Social Security, unemployment compensation, the minimum wage, the maximum workday, affordable health care, all 5-4 decisions in the United States Supreme Court along political lines. These were the very cornerstone of our protection of working families, yet they were challenged in court and almost fell, but for one vote. So let's stop believing in the fairy tale of nonpartisan judges, because that fairy tale is actually harmful. And when the Chief Justice Roberts and Alito and Neil Gorsuch get up and say that judges are umpires, they just call balls and strikes. I wish they had just called balls and strikes on the Medicaid expansion, because then a lot of poor, disabled, and elderly people would still have health care. They don't call balls and strike, they make the law. The reason I'm running for the Supreme Court is I, like all of you, have strong political values, and I'm not naive. I know that special interests will spend millions to keep me off the Supreme Court and continue to own the Supreme Court and continue to tilt the economy in their favor. But ultimately, this isn't about me, and it's not even about that special interest. It's about all of you. Do you want a Supreme Court that protects your rights rather than a Supreme Court that takes them away? The answer to that one's yes, by the way. Do you want a Supreme Court that protects your right of reproductive choice? Yes. Do you want a Supreme Court that protects your right to ask for a pay raise, whether you ask by yourself or ask collectively with your fellow workers? Do you want a Supreme Court that protects your right to hike and to fish and to enjoy a Wisconsin that has not been destroyed by pollution and excessive use? Do you want a Supreme Court that protects your right to build your own small business or own your own small farm and compete on a level playing field with the Foxcons of the world? And I know this one is important to all of us, and it's particularly important to me because my children are first-generation Americans from China. Do you want a Supreme Court that, in the words of President Kennedy, and thinking of what Donald Trump has been doing, the words of President Kennedy will not witness and permit the slow undoing of those human rights to which this nation has always been committed? That's what I want, and that's why I'm running for Supreme Court. I'm Kim Burns. I hope you will join me. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a representative on behalf of Jessica Dallas? Excuse me, Rebecca Dallas? Dallat. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Rebecca Dallat, you're speaking,
I am.
and you're Jessica Lovejoy.
I am.
Thank you, Jessica. Here you go.
Thank you. Well, hello everyone, good afternoon. Thank you to the Wisconsin Grassroots Network and to John Stanley and the other organizers for being here today and bringing this together. My name is Jessica Lovejoy, and I am campaign manager for Judge Rebecca Dallat, who's also a candidate in this Wisconsin Supreme Court justice race. Her father is undergoing treatment for cancer, and she couldn't be here today, and regrets that and wishes that she could be, but wanted to make sure that we got the chance to come and speak before you all. I started in this work as a community organizer, and I believe fundamentally in the value of organizing. Here, talking to our neighbors, organizing block by block, county by county. And I joined this campaign because of Judge Rebecca Dallat's commitment to fair and impartial courts, and because of her experience and what she brings to this race. She is by far the most qualified candidate that we have had in a race like this in decades. She has 23 years of experience in the Milwaukee County court system, first as a prosecutor and then as a judge. And I think it's important to note that judicial elections are nonpartisan for a reason. We don't like when this happens on the right, and I think that personal political views should not influence the court's decisions. Judge Rebecca Dallat believes that as well, and that's why she's running to stop the influence of dark money on our court. And take, for example, the John Doe case. We familiar with this? Yeah, and the recusal rule. This has been up in the news last year or two. And what happened there, we had Justice Gableman, who we're running to replace, come in and receive millions of dollars dumped into his campaign to help support him and get him elected, right? And then the secret money goes into the race, and he wins a narrow victory. And then he rules on a case saying that he doesn't have to recuse himself, when we know that the money that came in, that got dumped into the system, was there, and it's influencing the court. And he's writing the decision saying that we don't have to recuse ourselves. This is exactly what's wrong with our courts right now and what Rebecca Dallat wants to stop. And just because that's what's happening right now doesn't mean that that's the way that it has to be. And so I'm here today to tell you that we need someone like Judge Dallat to stand up for what is right and to say that enough is enough. But she has been out there every day talking to voters, and she has earned the support of 130 judges from across the state. These are people that work every day with the court system, that understand what it's going to take to turn this court around. And so I'm here today to ask you to join us in this fight, because we cannot do it without you. And I look forward to continuing the conversation and hope you'll join us.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. We'll move on now to our gubernatorial speakers. They were listed in order with the exception of Kathleen now has gone, thanks to the generosity of the current candidates first. So Andy, you're up next. Andy Grunick. Thanks for being here, Andy.
Hi, everybody. So could somebody dim the lights? Dim the lights. Let's get the spot on that disco ball, and let's get this party started. What do you think? You ready? So that has a couple of different meanings, doesn't it? Let's get this party started. That's why you're all here, right? Right? Lots of speeches today, and thanks to all of you for hanging out and waiting for the ones that are left, which is great. I appreciate that. There were a lot of great analogies. There was a wall analogy earlier. When I see that wall, you want to know what I see? I see something to go through, go under, go around, go over, but we should not be considering any walls as an obstacle to getting Democrats elected in the state of Wisconsin. Right? So that's why you're here. You're trying to figure out, how do we overcome these obstacles? How do we overcome the obstacles that we faced in recent years and the fact that we've had a hard time winning elections? Well, pick your candidates carefully. Make sure that you all get together and do exactly what you're doing and then act. Because all of these different great groups that are coming together to form grassroots organizations, to express your passion every day about this process, then go forward and act. Make sure that we're communicating effectively with one another and that ultimately we're working together, because why are we all here? I've been saying this now for over 2 years. Why are we all here? We're here because we care deeply about people and we want to make their lives better, right? No matter what cause is your cause, no matter what thing you get up in the morning to fight, ultimately you're trying to make somebody's life better, right? Well, so am I. So think about what's happening in Wisconsin and why I'm here as a guy who never discussed politics, never dreamed of running for public office, certainly never dreamed of running for governor. Why in the world am I here? Well, look around, because this doesn't look anything like my Wisconsin, our Wisconsin. Nothing like what I grew up in my entire life, and nothing like the Wisconsin I want my 2 young kids to have for their futures. My daughter's 10. My son is 13. Do they have the same opportunity in the state of Wisconsin that I had? So what's going to connect? What's going to connect with all these families that are struggling right now in our state? Because we have families that are working 2, 3, sometimes 4 jobs just to get by, just to figure out a way to get to the end of the week so they can pay their rent. And they're praying that they don't have to buy gas and groceries during the same week. Well, what's going to connect with them? Because I'll tell you what, as Democrats, as progressives, what do we have to do? We have to be able to effectively communicate to the state of Wisconsin, to the families that are struggling, that we have a real plan to create good paying, family sustaining jobs. Does that make sense? All right, so why am I here? Because I did that for 35 years. I grew one of the largest companies of its type in the world, helping struggling companies solve problems and create good paying jobs all over the world. Struggling companies that couldn't go to a bank and get a bank loan, but were trying to figure out, how do I secure my assets, the things that I have in my company, so I can solve some problems and gain access ultimately to billions of dollars to grow and create good paying jobs. Well, we can do that in the state, and we better be able to communicate that in 60 seconds, because the people who are struggling do not have the luxury of being in this room. They're not here, are they? They're trying to figure out, how do I get to that next job on time? And if I have 5 minutes, maybe I'll spend 5 minutes with my kids. But they're not thinking about going on a vacation. They want to know that we as Democrats have a real plan to create good paying, family sustaining jobs. Well, I'll tell you how I've solved problems my entire career. You find the strengths. You build on those strengths. You put together a simple plan. You have the right tactics. You execute and you measure yourself transparently. So what can we build on in the state of Wisconsin? We're great at food, right? Don't we grow food, process food, distribute food, package food? All of the industries around food we're pretty strong at. And that's a lot of industries around food. Fresh water, clean air, renewable energy. What if we're the best in the world in each one of those industry segments? So now people think of the state of Wisconsin when they think of the kinds of things that we need to sustain life throughout the world. We're creating jobs in science, technology, manufacturing, and agriculture. Doesn't that sound a little bit like Wisconsin to you? Do we need a plan to become the next Silicon Valley? Or do we need a plan that people can understand that's going to create that next good-paying, family-sustaining job? Well, those people, I think, are going to believe someone who's actually done it. I am an outsider. You think about what's going on in government right now, you don't have to look any further than Foxconn to understand that it doesn't work. It's not working. People aren't thinking about people. We're not putting people first. It's not working. So I've traveled the state and traveled the state before declaring myself a candidate for 18 months. I've talked to over 700 people. I was in this room from the very beginning and I listened to every word that was said. I am a listener. 18 months listening to over 700 people to inform real plans to actually move our state forward. Not hypothetical platitudes. Plans that will create good paying jobs by building on our strengths. What if instead of threatening people all over our state who are struggling by taking away their food benefits and drug testing them, what if we actually paid families a living wage and had training programs, real training programs that gave you certified skills, life skills, and job skills that were needed in your community and all around the state? That's how you're going to create more jobs. Because right now, if we help people off of government assistance, and on the other hand, we help companies all over the state of Wisconsin grow with the qualified people that they need, you're helping taxpayers on both sides of the equation. Right? Right? Don't we want to do that? Don't we want to be able to execute on the progressive values that have always made Wisconsin great? Don't we want to be a leader again in doing the kinds of things that help taxpayers and help people? Shouldn't we start a budget process, not with special interests, settling on those guys first, and then spend months and months and months debating over the kinds of things that actually help the people in our state? It's completely backwards. You have a governor who came into office. His big strategy was, let's divide our state. Let's create a divide and conquer mentality where we begin with our teachers and our public employees. And we do it because, why does he do it? Because he doesn't have a plan to grow our state. Period. So what does he do? He makes people a victim of a lack of a plan. He calls himself a Republican, right? The Republican brand. That's what we're up against all the time, right? That simplicity, lower taxes, right? He talks about the low unemployment rate. Great. Go knock on some doors, Governor Walker, and what you're going to find is nobody's home. And why aren't they home? Because they're working that third or fourth job. Is that your economy? Is giving Foxconn access to $1.5 billion to help them pay for their payroll? And paying people $10.88 an hour? Is that your vision for Wisconsin? Well, my vision is to be able to invest in our state. Because think about it from a number of different perspectives. If we have real job plans that help families and pay a living wage so they acquire those skills, that's great. If we have a real plan for infrastructure so that you understand that we can't build, there's no plan whatsoever. His promises to rural Wisconsin, that he's got rural Wisconsin's back. If you don't have a real plan for infrastructure development, for roads, for rail, for light rail, for ports, for airports, you have no way to build the kind of community and economic development that's needed throughout the state of Wisconsin. Impossible. If you're not connected to high-speed internet everywhere in the state of Wisconsin, it's really simple. If you can't connect there, nobody's going there. I drive around the state. I can barely get a signal for my telephone, okay, in a lot of different markets. Do you think that that's a climate where people want to start businesses? Well, when I'm elected governor, I'm telling you, you're going to be able to connect there, you're going to be able to get there, you're going to be able to use your phone there, you're going to be able to start a business there. We're going to do the kinds of things that are absolutely essential to spur economic development. Our schools. He stripped local control away from our schools. When schools, bottom line, who knows more about the challenges of our kids on a daily basis than the school itself? We can take that state structured budget We can give it some flexibility so schools can move that money around to be able to address the specific requirements of kids on the ground. Early childhood education. There's a way to scale early childhood education in very real terms so that we're not constrained by the cost of bricks and mortar, but that every kid shows up for school ready to learn. There are ways to deliver respect back to the classroom, because the connection between teachers and kids, there's nothing more important in actually providing a great education. The best public education in the world can be here in Wisconsin again. Connecting to families so that kids who have a terrible home environment can begin to connect in very real terms with those families again so they have the support to learn. Making sure we don't have a governor that says it's not important to have a meal for a hungry kid at the beginning of the school day because that doesn't translate in any way, shape, or form to their performance. Well, if that's right, send your kids to school hungry day after day after day and see if that really does make a difference. Right now we've got a governor who wants to water down what it means to be a teacher because he created a teacher shortage. We have a governor that basically has starved our institutions of resources so that he can claim that they're now failing so they can be privatized. We have a governor that's already turned away Medicaid expansion, and now the healthcare idea is to use block grants back to states so that somehow a governor can come up with a genius plan to make sure that everybody has access to healthcare. We already know what he's going to do. So I believe in some things that are pretty simple. One, we're going to create good paying, family-sustaining jobs throughout the state of Wisconsin. We're going to create an education system that's the absolute best choice for all of our kids. And we're not going to be thinking about rural and urban or city and country. This isn't about creating a divide in our party or any other party, because what it should be about is not about where you live, it's about what you stand for. What do we stand for in this room? Treating people fairly, treating people equally. So if you want to get through that wall, because I talk to a lot of people who feel a little bit discouraged about the fact that we have a really strong Republican governor with a really tight message and as much money as he needs to beat a candidate, one of us, right? A lot of discouragement. How are we going to do that? Well, you're already doing it. You take everybody through that wall, over that wall, around that wall, under that wall. We're going to do whatever it takes to work together to actually make it happen and find somebody who's a fighter who will not sit down until we take him out of office and we put back in place the kind of progressive values that have always moved our state forward. Thank you.
Okay, is Dana Walks here? Anybody here to speak on his behalf? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to Mike McCabe. Thanks for being here, Mike.
Thank you, everybody. Look, we live in troubled times. We live in fouled up times. We live in downright dangerous times. But it is not nearly enough to offer resistance. It is not nearly enough to be the resistance. It's not enough to be against Donald Trump or against Scott Walker. It's not enough to tell people what is wrong with Scott Walker and what is wrong with Donald Trump. That won't get us out of the mess that we're in. We have to let people know what Wisconsin and what America have the potential to become and how we reach that potential. We have to offer vision and ideas and energy and passion. We have to let people know that there's a better way. Because simply telling people what is wrong with Scott Walker or what is wrong with Donald Trump will lead to more years of their rule. We've had 3 elections for governor. It's become perfectly clear what Scott Walker can overcome. He can overcome a not Walker campaign. He can overcome people being told repeatedly what's wrong with him and what's wrong with his leadership. We have to make the people of Wisconsin a much, much better offer than they've been made in a very long time. I'm probably like a lot of you. I look at Wisconsin and sometimes I have a hard time recognizing this as the state where I grew up. In so many ways, Wisconsin has lost its way and is becoming a shadow of its former self. And I do look at our state sometimes and I think, how did we get here? And is this the place that I grew up knowing all those years? This is a state that was known from coast to coast as a beacon of clean and open and honest government. And we've watched our political culture grow poisoned, and we've watched corruption seep into our government. This was a state that was an industrial powerhouse. And now we're leading the nation in shrinkage of the middle class. And our poverty rate has reached its highest level in 30 years. And economic inequality is at its highest level in Wisconsin since the Great Depression. And it's not enough to say what's wrong with Scott Walker's management of our economy, what's wrong with his leadership. We have to tell Wisconsin that we can do an about-face about the whole way we approach building a sturdy economy. That instead of feeding the rich, instead of showering tax breaks and state subsidies on a few thousand people, or 1 or 2 huge corporations, or one global conglomerate from Taiwan, we can take our $3 billion and we can take more than that and we can invest it in empowering 5 million people in this state. It has to be Wisconsin's goal to have living wages for every worker. And when I hear even Democrats say that, well, maybe the best we could do is $10 an hour, maybe that's reasonable. Go out and ask any working person if they can make it on $10 an hour, if they can make ends meet, if they can find their way and stay in the middle class for $10 an hour. No, we need a $15 an hour minimum wage, and we need to adjust that wage for inflation so it keeps pace with the cost of living. We need to make our commitment to living wages for every worker. This is no time for timid. This is no time for same old, same old. This is no time to be ashamed of what we want Wisconsin to become. Because we won't reach that potential unless we are willing to make the people of Wisconsin a far better offer than they have been made for a very long time. We do need living wages for every worker, and we need health care for all. And we could create a public option for all the people in the state by changing just one word in state law. And if the people of this state choose me as their governor, I will change that one word. And the Badger Care program will be there for all Badgers. We need debt-free, affordable education for everyone in this state. We cannot continue to bury young people under a mountain of debt. It has to be our state's commitment that education be as affordable for our kids and grandkids as it was for their parents and grandparents. That is not about asking for anything for free. I went to the University of Wisconsin. I wasn't asking for anything for free. I was willing to work my way through college, but I sure appreciated the commitment that past generations had made to make education so preposterously affordable that I could get out of 4 years of college with holy cow, it was $770 in student debt. Tuition was in the hundreds of dollars. I'm dating myself. I'm 57 years old, but I remember a time when tuition was still in the hundreds of dollars, and I wasn't asking for anything for free. I worked pea harvests during the summer. And Libby McNeil would let me work 80 or 90 hours a week on those pea harvests. And I saved up a heck of a lot of money doing that over the course of the summer. And I would hold down a part-time job during the school year. And I got out of college with less than $800 in debt. Now the average is $30,000, and I run into young people every day who have $50,000, $80,000, sometimes over $100,000 in student debt. What does that do to our economy? When will they be able to make a down payment on a home? When will they be able to buy a car? When they are trying to dig out under that mountain that has been piled on them. And what does that do to the realtors and the home builders and the car makers and the auto dealers when they can't go out there and make that down payment on a home or buy that car? Again, for decades now, we have been showering tax breaks and state subsidies on a few with the hope that some of what they are given would trickle down to the rest of us. It has never been more than a trickle. No, we need to do an about-face and focus on empowering 5 million people in this state with those living wages, with health care for all, with debt-free education. And yes, we need to take high-speed internet to every doorstep in our state. Every household needs to have access to high-speed internet. I grew up on a dairy farm in Clark County. I come from rural roots. I'm the one candidate in this race, the only candidate in this race, who was born and raised on a farm. And I know that over half of Americans still don't have access to high-speed internet if they live in the country. Over half of rural Americans do not have access to high-speed internet. How do you fully participate in a 21st century economy, or even fully participate in modern American life if you do not have that basic tool? We need to bring that 21st century tool to our entire population. That's how we spend $3 billion. That's how we invest in the empowerment of regular people. And we have to, as a state, make a commitment that Wisconsin will become the first state in the nation to be fully powered by renewable energy. You know some state is going to get there. I can't tell you what year it will be. I can't tell you how long it will be before it happens, but you know some state will eventually become first, and it should be Wisconsin. But we will not get there unless we start seriously competing in the race to become that state. And we're not even making a half-hearted attempt at the current time. And yes, we should have taken that $800 million to begin to build the high-speed rail system that we should have. And it was a crying shame and a horrible tragedy for our state that we turned away that money. And look, we all pay our federal taxes. We send our money to Washington. We didn't get a federal tax cut because we turned down the $800 million. That money just went to some other state so they could get ahead of us. That's a crying shame. That is borderline criminal, and that has to stop. And then we cannot become the state that we have the potential to be so long as we have budget priorities that lead more of our state budget money going to prisons than to colleges. We spend more on locking people up than on creating a path to the American dream. We are paying more and more for failure, and as a result are investing less and less in success. And that has to stop, but I don't know how we stop that, and I don't know how we flip those budget priorities unless we deal with the fundamental injustice of our drug laws and our criminal justice system. I am for the full legalization of marijuana. And that is important. That is important because our current laws are the driving force behind mass incarceration. They are the reason why we have a state budget that spends more on prisons than on colleges. I was in Milwaukee just the other day, and I told the people there about 2 zip codes that they know very well. But I will tell you about those zip codes as well. One is 53206, which is inner city Milwaukee. That zip code is the zip code where more people are incarcerated than in any zip code in America. More people are in prison in 53206 than anywhere else in America. And 53217 happens to be the zip code. And I know this because of all the decades I spent exposing big money in politics, shining light on those transactions between wealthy donors and elected officials. Because I spent all that time tracking money, I happen to know that 53217 is the zip code that produces more political donations than any zip code in the state of Wisconsin. There are drugs sold and drugs used in both zip codes, but people only go to jail for using them in one. That fundamental injustice has to be addressed. And unless we address that fundamental justice and the failure, the human failure of our policies, we cannot change that budget reality where we are spending more to imprison than to educate. We have to make that better offer to the people of Wisconsin. We all have to make that better offer to our neighbors and our friends and our co-workers and our other acquaintances. We need to talk not about what's wrong with Scott Walker or Donald Trump, but what Wisconsin has the potential to be and how we reach that potential. We will not beat Scott Walker with money. If you are looking for your Goliath in this race, I just would give you a friendly reminder that it was David who beat Goliath. It was David who brought down the giant. We will not beat Scott Walker with money, and that's been proven in 3 elections already. In the last one, $33 million was spent by the Democrats to try to bring down Scott Walker, and he won with a virtually identical percentage of the vote that he did the previous time when $22 million was spent against him. And he got virtually the same percentage of the vote in that election as he did in the first election for governor that he won when $12 million was thrown at him. Money will not beat Scott Walker. And telling people what is wrong with Scott Walker will not beat Scott Walker. We have to tell people what we are for, not just what we're against. We have to tell people what we believe Wisconsin has the potential to become, not just how we feel Scott Walker has run our state into the ground. We have to be for something compelling and inspiring, not just against the current arrangement and the current people who are in charge at the Capitol. When you think about real leadership that has changed America, when you think about the kind of leadership that changed America in the past, I trust that no one in this room would dispute that Martin Luther King provided leadership that changed America. I remind you, Martin Luther King gave the I have a dream speech, not the I have a plan speech. He gave the I have a dream speech, not the I have an alternative budget speech. We have to also be unashamed and willing to dream and to imagine what this state has the potential to become and how we reach that potential. And finally, here's the biggest challenge of all in my view, and the biggest key to winning this election. The greatest president ever produced by the Democratic Party. The greatest president ever produced by the Democratic Party once said that the forces of organized money are unanimous in their hatred for me, and I welcome their hatred. That defiance, that spirit of defiance against the royalty of our society in the days of the Great Depression. When Franklin Roosevelt said those words, America had descended into the depths of the Great Depression, and here we are today facing economic inequality at its highest level we have seen since the Great Depression. And that spirit that Franklin Roosevelt spoke to, that defiance of the forces of organized money arrayed against him at that time, has been conspicuously missing for too long in our state and in our country. If we are going to become the kind of place we have the ability to be, we are going to have to summon the courage to stand as Franklin Roosevelt did, with braces on his legs. If he could stand, if he could take that stand against those forces with braces on his legs, you all can stand now. You all can stand. Get up off your feet, people. Don't leave me standing here alone. We have more power than we know. We have more power than we have been told. We have the ability to make Wisconsin what we want it to be. We can do this. Thank you.
Okay, we have one more speaker. We're going to allow Bob Harlow to say a few words. He's ambitious enough to be up here, and we've had other candidates who didn't show today, so we're going to allow him to speak for 5 minutes. I also want you to know that it's time for you to be filling out your evaluation forms, which were part of your packet. So if you can do that as you listen to Bob, that would be great. After that, we will be going to the dinner buffet of the pizza and fresh salad donated by a lot of our farmers. I also want to thank all of you that have hung around. I think we've had some very interesting presentations by our gubernatorial candidates and Supreme Court candidates. I hope you've found it a worthwhile day. It's great for you all to be here, and hope maybe we'll see you in March. A lot of the work that's being done in organizing is done through the Wisconsin Grassroots Network, and the other half is done through the Rural Caucus, as Tammy talked about the Progressive Caucus. We're doing our work through organizing in the rural area, the meat and potatoes, hard slogging of trying to create these Senate districts and get communities in those districts to rejuvenate and organize. And we need all of your help, whether you're in the Progressive Caucus, the Women's Caucus, the Native American Caucus. We need to all get together and do that organizing work. That's the hard part. That's the hard part. Thank you. Here's Bob.
So you know, the interesting thing about our political system is that you can learn 90% of how it works just by knowing that there are two parties, one of them called Democrats and the other called Republicans. And you know, democracy is where the people of a society have the say, have the power over their government, and a republic is where you have, you know, a select few have that power, and the majority of people not have that direct power over their government. And you know, that's really how that's the difference. I was in Richland Center, and I was at the Richland County Fair, and I just went up to this group of people who were talking, and they turned out to be Republicans. And so I was just there all alone, lots of Republicans. And you know, there are two kinds of Republicans. There are the polite Republicans, and there are the rude Republicans. And these were the rude Republicans. You know, the kind I know who voted for Trump, and not only that, but they liked it. So that kind of Republican. And it was weird. You know, they wanted to ask me about flag burning, and that was like the single point of interest that they had. And one of them had a camera up like this, right? And there was another guy. I had a sign-up sheet for our campaign just like this one. There was another guy who below the camera frame has a lighter out and is lit, and he's like bringing it near the sign-up form. And so it was strange. By the way, I'm going to take that as an opportunity to pass around the sign-up form, so that if you'd like to receive emails from our campaign, you can do that. But to get to the point of the story, one of the people there asked me, what kind of government do we have? And I said, we have democracy. And she said, you know, no we don't. She said, you know, we have, she said, a constitutional republic. And so there is exactly the difference of view that the Democratic Party wants to have a government that's accountable to the people of our country, and the Republican Party wants to have a government that is constitutionally accountable only to a select few. And what it all comes down to is how many people have the right to vote and how many people are voting. To form good public policy, it doesn't take that many scruples, honestly. But time and time again, when you see a society where you have high voter turnout, where politicians are accountable to the will of their people, you see good public policy, you see prosperity, good education, good healthcare, and where you see societies where you see low voter turnout or effectively a low number of people who are controlling who is in office, you see policies that enrich a handful of key supporters. And that's what we've started to see in Wisconsin, is we've seen the Republican Party in a concerted effort try to get voter turnout down so that they can sustain policies that enrich just a handful. And the fundamental thing we need to do if we want to change the way that our country works, and you know this because you're here, I mean, this is a grassroots festival, is we need to organize people and get them to the polls. And just by doing that, just by having people sit at the table who are honestly there to get good results for the people they represent, instead of to line somebody's pockets, our government will start working well for the people of Wisconsin. I hope to get to talk to everyone else more too and talk more about our campaign and give you some background on me as a candidate, but I know that we're heading towards the celebratory part of the evening, so I'm gonna hand the mic back to Nate, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Good job. So I want to thank you again for coming. We will be going into the dinner service, and that's in the room that you got your lunch sandwiches in, over around the corner. I want to thank you for your donations. You were kind and generous to help us with that. Thank you. And if the powers that be in Wausau decide to continue this in the future, maybe this will not only be the first annual, but maybe there'll be a second annual. Thanks so much.
Well, folks, thanks for watching. As you just heard, this is the end of the program. If you watched this any part of the day, you would have seen some really exciting, really committed people talking about the rejuvenation of our democracy. This is what's going on here in Wausau, but it's all over the state. So I'm honored to have been able to bring this to you. Right now, share this with your friends, talk and explain and just get conversations going about where we are, where we're headed. You just heard from candidates for governor, for Supreme Court, for other offices saying, we can do this, let's do it. So with that, good night, stay tuned, there's more coming in the future. Bye-bye.